Hello and welcome to BonkTable. I'm Mass, and with me today is Robert Shepard from Robert Shepard on YouTube. He is a famous Infinity and Conquest Last Argument of Kings YouTube content creator. You can find many videos where he reviews a lot of stuff, goes over games, has battle reports, tournament reports, and is just overall a really swell guy from Australia. Robert, take it away.
Mass, thank you very much for the invitation. Yes, so I am Robert Shepard from Robert Shepard YouTube, cover Infinity and Conquest. Been doing this for a little while, and Mass, you wanted to sit down and have a chat, so very happy to do so. It's early-ish in the morning for me, but I've had a coffee, and we are we're in, we're going. Coffee will kick in soon, I'm sure.
Yeah.
What did you want to talk about today, Mass?
So mostly I just want to talk about you as Robert Shepard. So you and I have gone back and forth over a bunch of different messages in the BonkTable Discord, in the international Discord. Slowly, became, quotes, friends. I would value you as a friend. I value your opinion, to be honest. Whenever you talk shop about Conquest, I'm always ears. Also you're a writer/editor for Goonhammer. So a lot of the... truly some of the the best papers on Goonhammer I find have you as the author, so I always quite like reading those. I just wanted to get you on the podcast. We're going to talk about you and how you got into wargaming, kind of what became your big war game, how you got into Conquest, and also how you got into content creation for wargaming in general, maybe some things you found interesting or positives, things, maybe some challenges as well. And then, I think organically, as we were talking in the pre-ramble, we'll probably just talk about Conquest and just our two different sides or our opinions about it, and just have some fun chatting, and people get to listen to us talk about things that everyone likes.
Awesome. Sure. So let's crack on then.
Yeah. How old were you when you started miniature wargaming?
So technically, I think I would have been something like 12 or 13, but that was the playing Warhammer 40k with my brother and one friend. And I had a Space Wolf army and an Eldar army, and I very briefly had a Khorne army, and my god, I have fundamental memories of when a 12-year-old assembles a Khornate Land Raider, no one else can pick that Land Raider up for the remainder of its existence. I put every possible spike on the damn thing, and I painted it red and then didn't go any further than that.
No details, no highlights, just pure red.
I bought a red rattle can, and my Space Wolves were painted. I took a hint from the internet to use baking soda for the bases, and then I never sealed it, so the baking soda turned brown over time. So it was these Space Wolves walking around on brown and vaguely yellowing snow, which is somehow nevertheless kind of apropos. But no, I just bought a red rattle can, and I'm like, I'm going to prime it red, and then I'll paint the rest later. And then I primed it red and never painted the rest later, because painting is hard when you're 12 years old. But that was wargaming as a very beginning, and it was one of those wonderful little you have these. I didn't know what the word metagame meant at the time, and I couldn't really have really expressed it if you'd asked. But I kept playing 40k over school era. And because it was basically just me and a mate named Matt by the end of it, I had the most tuned possible Space Wolf army, specifically for the purposes of killing Nurgle, which is what he played, and nothing else. And it was yeah, this game's the fucking best. I have no idea what it would have been like if I'd been exposed to literally anyone else out there at that point. I would probably have gotten my shit rocked, but for the purposes of me playing against Matt, I think one of my fundamental, real core memory, and to this day one of the best wargaming experiences I've had, is we broke all of those models out. We should have gotten into uni. I was off at one spot, he was off at another, and he'd moved out of home, and he did this housewarming party, and I'm like, we're gonna play some 40k, because it's been a while since we've played it. And I have this core memory of 40k and terrain on the floor in the garage. Now, the important thing about this memory is that upstairs it was a Queenslander house, so shitty wood floors, you could hear anything anywhere. We had classical radio playing on the radio, and his housemate was playing Quake upstairs. And so the ambience to this game, as we're pushing around, I think it was probably the last game of 40k we played, lives were going in different directions at that point. The ambience to this game was classical music and like Quake 90s shooter explosions coming from upstairs and reverberating through the garage, and it was one of the like best experiences imaginable. So I never quit wargaming. I lapsed out of it very briefly, played a bit of D&D, played a lot of D&D in uni, and then eventually was like, I should do wargaming again. I should do that. And so a bit later in uni, so sort of like age 21 probably, a few years later, I picked up War Machine. I played War Machine for like 10 years. I moved towns, I started a career, and War Machine was the wargaming hobby. And the thing about War Machine is it was a fascinating game that was of a time, because I got into it a bit after it started existing.
So,
but War Machine
2004?
came into existence. Something like that, yeah. It was like the early 2000s.
Now we're carbon dating you, by the way.
Oh yeah, I'm old. I'm old, Gandalf. But War Machine came into existence because it was the era. It was the great Games Workshop in shitification era, where Games Workshop was just like, we're a miniatures company, not a rules company, and fuck our customers. And they were terrible for like a decade. And Games Workshop eventually kind of turned that ship around. Let's not talk about their fucking prices. But there was this period where they were just a horrific company. And so all sorts of other games, the canopy parted, and very briefly sunlight reached ground level where people could make companies. And War Machine was one of those. And it was built, War Machine was a game that was designed to do two things. It was designed to, one, be tight as a rule set and competitive. I don't know if that was the original design goal, but it very, very quickly, like by the time I was playing it, it became that. And it was designed to have list building that was as crunchy and compelling and like interlocking parts and interlocking synergies as Magic the Gathering. Like the original designers were like, deck building in Magic is fun as hell. Can we have something that does that in a wargame? And it kind of succeeded at both. War Machine since is like it's a bit dated these days. New editions come out. The new company has custody of the IP. By all accounts, they're doing a fairly good job with it. War Machine's kind of a bit of a time capsule of early 2000s game design these days. But it was my first exposure to the idea that like you might play a war game competitively, and I was at the right age to dive into that shit. Now, tragically, I started War Machine by playing the dwarves, who at the time were like, there was one warcaster, it was just a mercenary army, They couldn't do shit, and they were terrible. They got better over time.
That feat was one of the most meanest ball-busting feats in the game, if you could pull it off.
The Gordon
landslide
fastball special, yeah. So I was playing War Machine, I think when the very first iteration of Steamroller, which would become their competition pack, existed. And Steamroller had one scenario, which was if you end your turn as the only person with any models in this big zone, you won the game. That's pretty early. That is time capsule shit in terms of like competition wargaming. And yeah, it turns out that having a warcaster that you can pick up and throw forward and then just shove everyone out of that zone is like, oh, I win this game with that. That was neat. Not even remotely close to the grossest thing that existed in War Machine.
Nope.
I was around in War Machine for like all of the wonderful bullshit in Mark 1 War Machine, where it's like they're just one shots, just army one shots, like Alistair Kane, who would kill your entire army and then teleport away from you, shooting you for the remainder of the game. And Mark 1 Haley 2, who was just the most like wonderfully toxic, horribly toxic feat imaginable, where you're like, oh, she looks less powerful than her prime version. Maybe she'll be okay. And then you realize what a game like War Machine feels like when your opponent is choosing the order of your activations in a turn.
Oh yeah, your opponent played your turn for you. It was awful.
And she made you feel like a fucking, like if you were the opponent, you got to feel like an idiot for 10 minutes. Just like, please, I don't want the facsimile of being the worst player in the game. Please stop making me activate my rear regiments before my... Anyway, I think it was a game against E. Haley that made me pick up Signar. I'm like, this shit's for me. And I ended up playing... I got pretty deep into War Machine competition. I ended up playing Signar, Crix, and...
Don't say
Signar, Crix, and Mercenaries. Stuck with Mercenaries.
Oh, thank goodness.
And I never achieved amazing results. Did perfectly well. Serviceable player. Like, usually we're podium finishes were kind of in reach, but there were some. War Machine was one of those games that just produced. Frankly, War Machine players are an invasive species, where there was this great exodus that kind of occurred when War Machine finally sort of it went through it's going through a renaissance these days, but War Machine went through a period of like, okay, this game is kind of over now. People are going back to Games Workshop or exploring other things. And you could always spot the War Machine players because they were just like, oh, what's this game, guys? Oh, this is fun. I'm a new player, and then within like a month, they were annihilating everyone.
We're not going to talk about my rise in the local meta Conquest then, because that's exactly what happened.
It does, because War Machine taught certain competitive instincts, like the assassination game. Even just if you played War Machine on clock, and War Machine needed to be played on clock, you ended up with just these mental reflexes for like, no, fuck it, make a decision. And that's so valuable for learning. Like if you have taught yourself not to suffer analysis paralysis, or to like shortcut yourself through like, oh shit, I'm suffering analysis paralysis, make a decision. What will happen is that you'll make more decisions. You'll do more during a game. And some of those decisions will be mistakes, but you learn from mistakes. Analysis paralysis arises because you're afraid to make a mistake. And mistakes are one of the big things that you learn from. And so, yeah, usually, like, War Machine was a fantastic game for generating players who picked up games quickly and got good at them quickly and then tended to stay pretty good at them. Just to sort of finish up on War Machine, War Machine is the sole case where I played internationally. I've traveled only once because there was a very brief window in my life where a combination of finances and life circumstances allowed for international travel. And so I played once at the World Team Championships.
Oh, congratulations.
Which was fun. That was an experience. I mean, getting stuck in Poland because of flights and because our travel agent almost don't have narcissistic psychopaths do your travel organization for you. We didn't know he was that at the time. There's stories and stories about the Poland trip, but it was super cool. I played Crix at its absolute filthiest.
So Mark II Crix?
Body and Soul.
Yeah. I played into that. You imagine playing Osram Dwarves into Body and Soul and Haley 2 and Lilith 2, and you're like, wow, guys, this is my meta. I love it. You're playing fucking Osram?
Yeah, kind of. Well, the biggest challenge I had with War Machine was that I was pretty good at it, but my overwhelmingly most regular opponent was probably the best player in the world. And that gives you a weird self-assessment of where you're sitting at, because you're pretty good at the game and you win most of the time, but I think my win rate against James fucking Morehouse, who's a lovely guy, was like, I think I managed to maybe take one game in 3, one game in 4. We had this run where I forced him into a series of successively more desperate assassination attempts, and it was like, he took a 30% against me and got it. He took a 15% against me and got it. And I made the joke then that, like, if the next game we played, I forced him into a 5% assassination to win the game and he got it, I was going to eat a fucking... Anyway. Can't say that on YouTube.
Eat a spider.
But, eat a spider, yeah. He was a tremendous player. And also, that's a whetstone kind of thing. But yeah, War Machine was fantastic and very formative. I think at this stage, I've played Infinity for about as long as I played War Machine. Yeah, as with many of the sort of slightly older guard, that was the genesis of that. Was like, oh yeah, wargaming is my hobby now, and those were absolutely fantastic years. And I eventually started looking for something else, and it took me 3 attempts to get into Infinity, where I was like, this game looks sick as hell. The models are awesome. The aesthetic is cool. Let's play some Infinity. And I tried, and I'm like, I don't get it. And then I tried again. This army sucks. The 3rd time, I figured it out. It was like I tried to play Hack-Islam and Morats in like 2nd edition and then 3rd edition Infinity, back when they were garbage. And I'm like, everything seems way too difficult to do. And then I picked up the 3rd time. I'm like, let's give it a shot again. Let's actually try this. I've got 2 little starter sets, and I bought some Pan-Oceania. And the thing in Infinity is that there are a whole bunch of different ways to on-ramp yourself to the game, but most of what you're going to do in Infinity is shoot people. And so the faction that just kind of has the best gunfighters as their core factional strength, it turns out pretty good at getting you started, particularly if you're competitive and you want to sort of do well. Having that just like, King, it'll be fine. These guys have got better ballistic skill than everyone. You're going to be okay at the thing you'll do 90% of the time. So I finally figured out the game Oceania, took it to a tournament, took it to CanCon that year, took it to WinterCon in Canberra, and really, eventually it was it was at the time, I like, oh yeah, I'm playing this in addition to War Machine. But at that point I played War Machine for like 10 years. 10 years is a really long time to do something. Edition change was coming. I remember I had an experience with War Machine where I ordered a whole bunch of stuff from the Privateer Press, and they took so long to ship it to me that there was time for them to tease, develop, and release an entire new edition that rendered everything I had purchased illegal for the army that I had purchased it for. I was like, maybe it's time for me to put these guys aside for a bit. So,
yep, I agree with you. Been there as well.
Yep. I ordered. There was a period where Cephalix were a mercenary contract, and I ordered an entire Cephalix army, and then they released whatever the version before the current one is.
That's Mark 3. They're
Mark
currently
3,
on Mark
I think.
4.
And in that, Cephalix ceased to be a mercenary company. Or it ceased to work the same way or something. I forget.
No,
but
still
so Infinity.
Still Mark, and there's still a mercenary thing in Mark 3. Might be the Mark 4 one. Was that 2022? Because that's when Mark 4 came out.
No, it would have been before that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's probably Mark 3.
Well, that's all right. Anyway.
27? No. Probably 2015 or 2016-ish.
Something like that. Yeah, it would be about that. So I kept playing War Machine for a little while after that, but just eventually lapsed out of the game, sold a bunch of stuff. I have a few things as memorabilia sitting in a display cabinet. So then Infinity. And Infinity has been not the game I played exclusively, but it's been the main game I played since then. So, got into Infinity finally successfully with Oceania, and took them to events, and then eventually was like, okay, well, we'll try some other faction. These aliens seem pretty cool. I'll get the Onyx Contact Force because they look like they play like Oceania. It's a bunch of robots. I can buff them with different hacking programs. I grabbed them. And then I'm like, well, I've got these. Infinity does this thing that other games sort of tend to do as well, but Conquest doesn't. Where there are there are factions in Infinity that are like stepping stone factions. One of the ones that really got me like even further into the game was a faction called Dashat Company, where Dashat Company was a mercenary company army that I took to Novacore 2020, and Dashat Company was a mix of Hack-Islam and Ariadnan troops, two different factions, or Hack-Islam, Yuching, and a dash of Ariadna. And so if you're like, oh, Dashat Company seems really cool, and you bought them, because Infinity is not hugely expensive, it's like 15 models an army, you very quickly expand beyond that, but like it's not too hard to buy a force. You end up with a situation where you're like, well, I've bought Dashat Company, and I've got half of a Hack-Islam list, and half of a Yuching list, so I guess I could just buy the remaining ones of those, and you get like suckered into these large collections. And Onyx was that for me, where Onyx was like, well, I had to buy some Morats to make Onyx Contact Force work, because it's this like multicultural alien contact army. And so then I bought some Morats, and with Morats going back to them, the game kind of like opened up for me like a flower, because Oceania was really fantastic to onboard. Because Oceania is like, we're the dudes with the guns. We're this big, like, European knights and power armor and thermoptic camouflage. And we don't press buttons or hack or any of that for shit. And there is not a smoke grenade to be seen. But we've got the biggest guns. And then particularly with Morats, you're like, you're an army of war and aggression, and this entire species is warlike. Very cool. However, you're not actually very good at gunfighting. In fact, you're not very good at many things. You're kind of like a Saturday morning breakfast cereal cartoon villain, and you had to play real hard. But what Morads had access to was cheap shit. Like really cheap, expendable, like we scraped these aliens out of the hulls of our ships and we're just throwing them into battle.
Just bodies?
Oh yeah. And that was like Crix had taught me the love of how many dudes can I fit in this list exactly. And in Infinity, you could kind of do that with some factions, but with Morads, it was like, no, just here you go. Just take like a Gaki, like the Hungries is the name of the species. This little like alien, like they're just xenomorphs basically.
Mm-hmm.
A Gaki literally had a rule where when it died, it blew up in acid. And so, this thing's job is to be expendable. Go and just cause mischief, cause problems on purpose. And that plus smoke grenades, and so in Infinity, there's lots of gunfighting. Infinity is a game where you get to shoot back at your opponent when they move into your line of sight during your turn. And so in Pan-Oceania, you would have these games where you're like, oh, I lost all of my gunfights and I died. It would happen very rarely because they're really good at it, but you could have that happen. You could just kind of get locked out of a game. But if you have access to smoke grenades, you can block line of sight. Now, you can only do it during your turn most of the time, but cool. Oh, wow. You mean I don't have to fight that huge enemy gun positioned up in that building? I can just throw a smoke grenade and walk around it, and then send some alien the long way around to climb up the building and then blow up on its face? Like, that's fucking incredible. That's amazing. And so really got into Infinity, like, beyond just being a Pan-Oceania player, guys. And I played everything now. I think I've got either a means to, or I own like 4 different factions, but I have the models that basically let me play any of them. And I've played in multiple satellite events. I've qualified for Worlds on
nice job.
2 separate occasions. So Infinity Worlds qualification is winning. You just win an event. Every nation gets like 1 or 2 what are called satellite events. And then, so you'll get like about 100 different winners out of that from worldwide. So yeah, I've won 2 different satellite events inside Australia. My tournament win rate in Infinity is pretty damn good. Solid at the game, enjoy it a lot, and I've kept playing it for like 10 years. And that kind of segues into content creation, actually. To talk briefly about Conquest, since this is a Conquest podcast.
This is also a Get to Know About Robert Shepard podcast.
So I played Infinity, and it had become my main game for probably only like maybe 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I can play more than just one game. And I have a mate called Dan who, he is also a writer for Goonhammer, and he has this like thing of psychology where he's like, Dan would get interested in a game and go, I need someone to play this game with. Rob, here's your starter box. Boom, it's yours. It's a gift. At which point I would subsequently go all in. And so played Song of Ice and Fire for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. The devs eventually spaffed that one, as did Season 8 of the TV show. But I played Song of Ice and Fire.
Was that the same time as Season 8 of the TV show?
So I got into Song of Ice and Fire, like, I think maybe the year after Season 8. And you could already feel the people who were still playing, people who loved the books, but anyone who had gotten into that game because the TV series was so cool was like, I'm less enthusiastic about this these days.
Mm.
So not necessarily the greatest investment long term, but it was very fun. I've got a Free Folk army sitting on a shelf. Free Folk, the faction who spam out the most units. When I was getting into Song of Ice and Fire, I was just like, I'm just gonna look ahead. And I found a Free Folk card that they could play called something like the Endless Horde, and I'm like, yes, I've found my faction.
I feel like this is a running theme of you just being like, how cheap and how much can I bring is kind of your go-to.
Not all, like it. So the thing that I tend to look for actually is recursion. Do I have a way of bringing models back And if recursion either doesn't exist in the game or isn't broken, then not always. Like, I can definitely play elite factions, but I do like one of my favorite things in any war game is when some dickhead little goblin overperforms. Like, nothing brings me greater joy in Conquest. Force-grown drone or militia bowman unit kills something.
It's a sad day in hell when that happens.
I had a game yesterday where you know the Polemarch, so Polemarch, Warlord, Army of Lions, Atlantis Spear, uh, five Phalangites plus a Sacred Band auxiliary stand.
Yeah.
Fucking killed them with men-at-arms. And not just like took off the last wound. I mean, a men-at-arms, not men-at-arms, a militia bowman regiment killed them in melee from almost full health. Fucking legends.
What the fuck is happening? If that is
a lot of sacrifices had to be made for that to happen.
You blessed
a lot
them?
a lot of other they died to the go down fighting, but a lot eventually. But like what was happening was they were sitting there shooting in the flank and then eventually charging into the flank, and there was just enough stuff in front of, like, just Pac-Man feeding like MSUs and characters into the maw of that Phalangites. They could never quite properly turn and fight the militia, so the militia got Blessed Inspire Clash into the flank of the Phalangites twice, eventually winning a supremacy roll, getting the last clash that they needed. So that's their highest watermark. I was so happy that they killed that absolute Death Star of a regiment by themselves.
Well, sacrificing men-at-arms.
Oh yeah. A lot of other people had to die for those militia to be heroes. That's not the point. The point is that the militia, like the 100 Kingdoms' bravest sons, were absolute legends. So got into Song of Ice and Fire, enjoyed it a lot, but it was a kind of waning game when I picked it up. I've got a Free-folk army done up in like brown furs, but then snow and blue crystals on the bases. There are some, they feature a little bit. There's a couple of battle reports on my channel about them. And then I got into Conquest. Now, we'll jump to Conquest, but I got into Conquest the same way that I got into Song of Ice and Fire, which is that Dan went, this game looks cool, I'd like to play it. I need someone to play it with. Rob, here's an old Dominion box.
Wow.
And that was like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, I'd free stuff, yeah, I'll assemble and paint these, yeah, let's have a game. This is fucking sick, and I had been looking for a rank and flank for a little while, but nothing really scratched the itch. I very briefly played Warhammer Fantasy, and while I did enjoy it, I played Warhammer Fantasy during the period where I think 8th edition Fantasy had just dropped, but they had not updated any of the codexes, army books.
Okay.
So
yep.
I played Empire. 8th edition Warhammer Fantasy, if that was the one that introduced pre-measuring, where they were just like, just measure, it's fine, you don't need to guess ranges. But all of my cannons and mortars in Empire were costed assuming that you had to guess range bands for all of your shots. And it turns out that Empire great cannons and mortars were very effective when you could just be like, I'm just going to measure this. Okay, I guess that far. I hit. How about that? I still did not win very many games because the community, so the Warhammer Fantasy community was very rusted on, and I had a couple of experiences where I'm like, I am not enjoying talking to this person. I'm actually having a real bad time sitting down here. And I had one game where it was like, there was an event coming up I was considering going to, but it was like my 5th game ever of Warhammer Fantasy. And I'm sitting down across from this guy, and he casts Flames of the Phoenix on my big unit of halberdiers, which is, it does a hit for every stand, every model in the regiment, and if you don't get rid of the spell, if you don't dispel it, then it'll do even more powerful hits in a subsequent turn. And he casts that, I take a bunch of damage, I'm like, ow, that sucks. And then I begin my turn, and I do like my movement phase, and then I take a shot with my cannon. And I go, shit, sorry, it's magic phase and then shooting phase. And my opponent goes, yeah, it is, you've skipped your magic phase. And I just kind of look at him,
man.
And I'm like, okay, I guess you really want to win against this person who's played all of 4 games. I have learned everything I need to know about this community with this interaction. Cool. Yeah, you can. We'll play out the rest of this game, and then I'm going to go and list these miniatures on Buy Swap Sell, and maybe I'll play Empire in some future war game. And that's what has kind of happened with Conquest. It was like looking for a good rank and flank, and Warhammer Fantasy. I mean, they were just about, that was pre-End Times, but then End Times rolled in, and I'm like, well, that sucks. I really liked this setting. Hopefully someone will make a sweet ass video game that I can play 1,600 hours of at some point in future.
It is a sick ass video game.
It's a really fucking, anyway, Total War, Warhammer, fucking the Total War series was always like, Shogun was a tech demo for Games Workshop, give us the license. It took a very long time for them to do so.
I love Shogun Total War.
The whole series is fantastic.
Such a great game.
But yeah, got into Conquest, and in Conquest, I finally found the rank and flank that I was looking for. And like, oh, didn't you play Song of Ice and Fire? Yeah, Song of Ice and Fire is not a rank and flank. It looks like one. What it is it's a skirmish game on square bases, and it's a real. But units in Song of Ice and Fire are agile. They turn on a dime. They're very mobile. It's yes, there are square bases. Yes, there are flanks, but things move. Nothing has momentum in Song of Ice and Fire. It's very much about tactical geometry and maneuver and remaneuver and position. You don't have to think ahead necessarily as much as you would in a game like Conquest. And so Conquest was that game that was like, oh shit. Like I've had multiple experiences in Conquest where I've looked at the board state and gone, who is to blame for this terrible situation I find myself in? Oh, it's me. It's me from like 20 minutes ago, from some decision I made about where to bring a unit onto the board on turn 2 has resulted in this catastrophe arising. And there's no other game in wargaming. Like, Infinity is hugely reactive. It's snappy. You can plan in Infinity, but Infinity is a game that demands you be constantly reactive because of the way that it gives you access to information, and like you don't always know the full totality of your opponent's forces, and things can appear from ambush. And because you can be shot in your turn in Infinity, you can have some like sniper appear, take a shot, kill a member of a fire team that you're expecting to go and push a button, and you have to like change plans on the fly. Even just you lose a gunfight you thought you were going to win. Infinity is a game that requires you to be like constantly responding to and manage risk, like adroitly respond to some catastrophe that has occurred. Conquest is an incredible complement to that, because in Conquest your decisions have momentum in a way that almost no other game has. The same kind of like, the small decision you're making now is going to change the impact of the game in 4 turns and half an hour's time. And that is so cool and so interesting, and it complements Infinity so well. And it's one of the things that you try and like, when new players are like, I think this is broken, or just like, I don't understand what I could have done differently. It's because they're looking at a board state where right now they're screwed, but they're screwed because 4 turns and 100 decisions ago, they deployed a unit in a position where it's going to take a fight it wasn't ready for, or they walked forward rather than walking backwards, like so long ago. Because things in Conquest decisions have momentum, and regiments have momentum, and you do not get to just turn 100 belligerents on a dial and have them face a different direction easily, all of that kind of stuff. So these days, I don't play Song of Ice and Fire terribly much anymore. I've still got my collection, and the new edition is apparently coming out. I might take a look. But Infinity and Conquest are my 2 main games because they complement one another so nicely. They teach different skills. They scratch different mental itches. List building is so different for them. And I guess we'll probably get into talking about Journey Through Conquest in a bit, but should I take a sip of water, segue briefly into content creation, because that happened partway through this story.
Yeah, no, I'm enjoying myself. It's basically, I just have a live podcast happening right now, because you're just going through each of the questions, answering all my questions. There's very little I can add. I appreciate it. You should be drinking your water as I fill this bit of your gurgle. And yeah, no, this is it's quite interesting. Like hearing like when I interview people, everyone's story of like how they started, how they get into a thing, why stuff they tried out. Like you tried out fantasy and sorry, not AGC more. A Song of Ice and Fire, and like it didn't work out, but it led you to something else to where you are today.
Mm-hmm.
What is Conquest and still Infinity, because it like yeah, the guns. I do like when you were talking about how the Goblin Man just getting away with it kind of thing of like, well, this guy's a goblin, and you know if he just rolls well enough, he's gonna do it. But he's not really gonna do it enough times. But I have a bunch of them. At least one of them will go through and it'll change everything. And your story about the militia bowman who, over the course of 3 turns, in the flank of a found GD block, who's dealing with men at arms sacrifices. Because yeah, I agree. The men at arms would probably be would do more damage to the Fallen GDs than the militia bowmen. But here we are, having Fallen GDs in the flank.
They're what I had in the moment at the time.
Yeah,
I think over the course of that game, that militia bowman regiment killed an Aristarch, his unit, and they killed 2 out of 3 characters and their regiments just because of game circumstance and being the thing I had in the moment at the time. The Aristarch had just finished murdering my chapter mage because my opponent Michael has learned not to let that unit live. But that was a fascinating game. But so content creation, because content creation happened in and around the like looking for games. So there was every fucking story that anyone even remotely close to our age, I think I'm a bit older than you.
You, by the sound, so I could probably guess your age at 42 based upon the information you've already provided me.
Close, 39.
39. Yeah, okay, that's not bad. Yeah, you're 9 years older than me.
Yeah. Never let anyone even remotely in our cohort talking about their, hobby journey or life journey. There's a big fucking thing that happened kind of somewhat recently that changed the world in significant ways. And so the fucking pandemic. And I was playing Infinity during COVID. What a fucking pair of years that was. I remember the probably the most monkey paw comment I have ever made was, and yet which I think I stand by, it was like New Year's Eve 2020, and not just Australia was having fucked out the ass bushfires. Like, it was horrible. There were fires encroaching on my town. I still have a vivid mental image of if you've ever seen firefighting maps, they look like they look like warfare, like warfare trench diagrams. And I remember seeing this image of the trenches that were, for lack of a better term, the fire breaks and everything, that like this battle plan for dealing with a fire. An army helicopter had actually started it by touching down too close to some grass. Turns out army helicopter searchlights are hot as hell. And so the army they were doing search and rescue. They kicked off another fire that was burning in towards my town. And my town, Canberra, capital of the country, but it's just a little town. I thought home of the government public service, basically.
Okay, yeah, because you live in Act, what is a national park by the looks of it. This is the Australian Capital Territory.
Yep, it's surrounded by bushland, and it's also in it's surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, so it sits in kind of a bowl. And so New Year's Eve 2020 saw, it was hot as hell, we didn't have AC, and this bank of smoke roll, it was like seeing a wave move over the town. And we had to just close everything up. You couldn't breathe. Everything was on fire. Fires were approaching. It was the worst. And we got through it, but it was even just the air quality, the fact that you couldn't keep a house insulated from the smoke. You could barely manage that. You couldn't keep You had to go outside. Like, we had a cat. The cat would be like, I want to go out the fuck outside. I'm like, the fuck you do, but okay.
The cat, let me die,
You
damn
put
it.
I've worn a beard since I was bloody 17, 18.
Lucky.
You put a mask on and it like doesn't seal properly. It was truly miserable and scary. And the rural fire services and the fire services, like a lot of homes were lost. Ultimately the defensive plans kept Canberra safe. The town has had some rough fires in the past, but didn't hit the town limits, and we got through it. And I remember like the smoke was clearing, and clean up, and like the hills were black. And it was at some point around that news reports began to circulate about some outbreak of illness in Wuhan. And I remember being on the phone with my mum, and she was just like, I'm pretty worried about this pandemic shit. And I said, I'll take it over the fires. And she's a nurse, so she's like, do you have any idea what you're fucking saying? And nevertheless, I think I fucking stand by it. In terms of just the personal experience, I would take 3 years of lockdown again over those fires another time. But yeah, 3 years of lockdown. So as with so many people who are wargamers, whose hobby requires another person to be present, got into like the whole hobby had to just migrate to Tabletop Simulator. And so we did. And I was part of a podcast at the time called White Noise, which covered Infinity. There was like an ensemble cast.
Okay.
So I'd do an episode once every month or two. And we covered the game. That sort of doesn't exist anymore. But I think the very first, or very possibly, this was before, there's a thing now called the Infinity Global League. Does tons of stuff online, big established presence. It's got, I am pretty sure the Infinity Global League's main event every year is a satellite event and Worlds qualifier. So you can play on TTS and qualify for Worlds for Infinity. I'm like 90% on that. The main person that organized it, Ollie, is a just legend. One of those people that like, Ollie's the kind of person that cannot care anything any less than his their absolute maximum.
Wow,
Ollie just cares so much about everything. Ollie's a playtester these days for the game, and it's the kind of person that you worry about burning out because they're so passionate, but they're just a pillar. They organized the Infinity Global League, but before even that, I have on a shelf to my left the first place prize for I'm pretty sure the very first TTS event that was ever run on Infinity, ever run for Infinity, and it was the White Noise TTS tournament. I wonder if I can see it. I think it's just got a thing that says champion on it. In any case, and in my infinite wisdom, I said I'm going to play in this, but the main podcast hosts were like, "Can someone figure out how to like video or live stream this, please?" And I was like, I can probably figure this out. Sure, I'll do that. And so my very first experience in content creation was promising to live stream the finals of what was at the time the only TTS event, which meant that like anyone in the world who was just figuring out this TTS stuff and was really keen to play a game, like people who were really motivated to play because they were full-on players, played this. And I agreed to cast the finals. So I was casting the finals while playing in the fucking finals.
Oh my god!
While figuring out the technology, and like I can parallel process a little, but I do not recommend trying to live stream a sweaty competition game that you are also playing in. I played against a Polish player. No surprise there. The Poles are incredible in every fucking war game they play in. The Polish Infinity scene has produced one quintessentially weird Polish moment where it's like, you guys did not read the room on this at all, but the players are incredible. The Polish Warcore FAQ, where they tried to just patch the game themselves, goes down in history as one of like Infinity's great moments. But
so I'm not a huge follower of Infinity. So now I would like you to tell me the story because this seems very interesting.
The Polish Warcore FAQ was it would have been in third edition Infinity, where so a Warcore is a vanguard, and a Warcore very similar. Like it's the volunteer community who do like community building and organization. They are sometimes relatively expert in the game, but it's not a prerequisite, and so it's not like necessarily a thing. Mostly their job is to be community builders and volunteers.
So just like regular vanguards. Here's a demo to get the game, run game days, run tournaments, do hype. Like you don't have to be the very best. You just got to be good.
You just got to be willing to turn up and give your time. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you for volunteering.
So Warcores are important to the scene, etc., etc. Technically, I have a Warcore application. I have had that application pending, I think, for 8 years now.
They don't want you. You won that one tournament, and that was it. You're never going to get approved.
I run Infinity events once a month, but anyway. But so the kind of sight unseen, this big document labeled FAQ kind of just began circulating on the internet. And then it was the Warcore FAQ was what it was called. And it was like, oh, well, the Warcore's the official volunteer program, so this is official, right? And it was like almost top to bottom fan-made errata dressed up as an FAQ. And people were looking at this being like, is this official?
Oh no.
This is weird. And it wasn't. It was like, I don't know, half a dozen Warcores from Poland who'd put their heads together and gone, we know what's best for the game. We're going to release this. And there are so many things wrong with that as a concept of like the like present, and they eventually rebrand, like after enough people were like, is this official? They eventually rebranded it as like the unofficial. It eventually became called the unofficial FAQ or unofficial something. But it came out. It was just some of the Warcore team in Poland kind of deciding that they knew what was best for the game and releasing this. And because of things like language barriers and like assumptions about what like other people think, all that kind of weird stuff that happens when you're dealing with big cross-cultural communities, etc. They presented this as if it was official, and so the drama that caused, like all of them got, because they're effectively fraudulently misrepresented the company, like they didn't mean to, but that's what they did, and that's the drama that it caused. All of the people involved got their Warcore, like they got yanked from the program.
Aww.
It was just like hugely, it was in terms of the like battles that have occurred in Infinity, I think it falls only behind the Great Intent Wars over how you play the game.
Is this the like RAI, RAW battles people pop up every once in a while with, like rules as intent, rules as written, or
sort of? So in Infinity, we play on these big, complicated tables. So gunfighting in Infinity is lethal. The best way to not get shot is to not get seen. And so if you ever just Google Infinity Wargame table, you'll see like fucking masterpieces.
Doing it
right They're just gorgeous. Yep, yeah, and like cityscapes and battlefields and all this kind of stuff, but they'll all be big, dense tables. What that means is that playing a game of Infinity usually involves moving these fragile meat sack humans around, knowing that at any moment, like high caliber rounds could be coming their way, and trying to manage that. And because your opponent can shoot you in your turn, really, really important is line of fire. Like moving to just see one enemy trooper. If you Google, exactly that. You sent me a picture. Yep. If you Google slicing the pie, it's a breaching technique where as a person moves like left to right, your line of fire across a room through a doorway.
Oh, it's you have your easy corners and your hard corners.
Yep.
Yeah.
All of that applies in Infinity. As you're trying to get line of fire to just one enemy trooper at a time, so you don't get caught having to fight multiple things, because anyone who can see you can respond to you. And there was this really long argument over how to best play that, because what you do is you look at the table and you're like, I'm gonna move my Panasciania Fusilier just to see your enemy model over there in the distance. And because that line of sight check is done by looking at the table, you have to play like 90% of players, myself included. The way that you play Infinity is as you're doing things, you talk to your opponent and you get their help doing things like line of sight checks, where you're like, "Hey, I'm gonna move. I'm gonna keep moving here. Just tell me, like, can you tell me when you can see me? Oh, I can see you there. Okay, cool. I'll stop there. We'll have a shot." There was this small cadre of sweaty fuckwits who were like, no, 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 no. Line of fire drawing is a measurement, and you aren't allowed to pre-measure in Infinity. So you have to lock in all of your movement, and then in my tactical genius, I will get to ARO multiple times. And what actually happens in that circumstance is if you have opponent who refuses to help you in figuring out line of fire of troops as they're moving around the table, what you have is that you eyeball it yourself and then you call the TO every time they fucking argue with you, and it's a miserable experience. Infinity really requires collaborative play just like to make the game function, but it's one of the great strengths of the game. And there were this small cadre of people who were like, no, 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 you're not allowed to pre-check line of sight ever. You have to just play it, like make the move and play it as it lies. And it was eventually I went back and fucking forth for months because it really came down to it. So here is how it was eventually resolved. One of the game designers came onto, like, they didn't usually jump onto the forums particularly much because the forums were primarily English speaking. They're a Spanish speaking company.
Okay.
But a game designer, actually the head of the organized play team, Heloise, who's a legend, jumped onto the forums and said, the way that you measure, yes, in Infinity, pre-measurement is not illegal. The way that you check line of sight is by looking at the table. We cannot write the rules in a way that police or prohibit players from looking at the table. Therefore, you can check line of sight at any time. And that was the core thing. That was like every single fucking person, apart from this small cadre of wankers, was of that opinion, because it just made the gameplay better and it was just better for everyone. But the event, and that was it. That was the decisive end to the Infinity Intent Wars, and the great evil was vanquished that day. That would have been the most dramatic online skirmish that ever occurred. But the Polish Warcore FAQ, bless them, was second only to that. But all of that is a secondary to content creation. So how I got into fucking content creation was agreeing to live stream or record the final...
Your own game.
And it turned out to be my own game. And so there is a Polish player named Persian. His actual name is, I think it's pronounced Łukasz. Looks like it's spelled Lucas, but it's pronounced Łukasz because it's Polish. He's a fucking champion and an incredibly good player. A legend of a guy and incredible. I cannot speak highly enough of him. He's super cool. He and I played in the finals. We played to a bloody draw. I had to, like, the only way I had a chance in that game was to basically play to just hold him back as best I could, because I was trying to play and record and host. He was very gracious during the entire thing, having an audience. Absolutely, it would have been impossible if he wasn't. But oh my god, what an experience! I've never been more mentally exhausted. But I had to learn how to make this software work. I had to learn how to do recording stuff. Like, we'd only ever used Audacity for the podcast before that. And so that was like, oh, that was kind of cool. Maybe I'll do some more of this at some point. And then I did. I did some commentated games. I did, and it just eventually, like, you've over time, I just put videos up, and I do it as a hobby. It's still a hobby. I put videos up like maybe once a month. And then you're like, oh, maybe I'll commit a bit more to that. What kind of battle? Do I just do battle reports because that's what everyone does? Do I eventually start doing like educational content, or like, do I know enough about this game to talk about the game in a way that's not just a battle report? And these days, after I don't even know when the first video I posted was. I'm sure I could find out if I open up YouTube and click view your channel. It's probably been 4 or 5 years.
It's quite a while.
God help me. We're doing it live. No, YouTube does not have a multiple pages function, and I ain't scrolling down that far.
If you go to your YouTube and then you go to your like managed channel, you can actually like shift through it a lot quicker.
Oh, sure. Yeah. But anyway, so over time, I've covered Infinity, Conquest, and Song of Ice and Fire, and started with Infinity, and it's the main thing that I cover. YouTube is telling me that I have posted 266 videos.
Congratulations.
And these days, I'm on an about once a week. I try and do one video a week. I have learned a bunch, actually, about workflow, because it's one of those ones where it's like, you only got so much time. I work a full-time job. It's relatively demanding. I try and do community management, try and, help with, particularly with the Infinity community in Canberra. I'm the one that organizes all of the smaller scale events for that. I've only got so many hours a week, but try and put out one video a week for Infinity, and then I try and get Conquest in and around that when it's like germane to do so. So I do things like list analysis videos for events when they come up, or like every now and again I'll do a video that just like covers a faction. Don't do battle reports terribly much, but I do tend to do tournament recaps, like
a HeroCon
tournament that I've attended.
I quite like HeroCon, by the way. That was a good video.
Yeah. Thank you. That was fun to do. Actually, the probably the biggest mistake that I have made in content creation is with regards to one of my Conquest videos. Just in terms of like, I misjudged very badly how to do this video. But with that as an exception, the whole life is a learning experience. So I've covered Infinity and Conquest. I just kind of stuck with it. It was one of those ones where it's like, if you're doing content creation, it's the tools that exist these days are pretty robust. I record using OBS, and I very rarely have to edit videos because OBS has a pause recording function. So if I need to stop and take a drink or have a think about what I'm going to say next, I just have I have pause recording hotkeyed on the keyboard. I'm just like, I need to think for a second. Pause button. What do I say next? The pause button, and that effectively does what you might call live editing. And so a battle report for me, maybe it takes an hour to record 40 minutes of audio, but all I've got to do around that is upload the file, generate a thumbnail, post it, which really helps keep it would not be manageable otherwise. Like the longer form videos, I need to not script exactly, but I need to think. Like if I'm doing something like a faction focus where I'm like, let's talk about 100 Kingdoms. Talk about all of the regiments in 100 Kingdoms and how they play. Like that needs a run up. I need to think about that for, a week or two. And so having a technical means to at least make the recording not too challenging and not require editing in an editing program. I can do that, but I'm not very good at it. Has been really helpful in just being like, try and get one video out a week. And it's been really fun. I've really enjoyed content creation. Enough people at this point have told me that they value watching my shit. I'm like, yeah, cool. It's really nice to have like a positive, just have people who are like, this has been helpful for me. I've been able to get into this game and having a great time. This has been a resource. Like, awesome. That's what I wanted. That's super cool. So yeah, that is content creation and the war games that I play. Pause for breath, and I'm going to have a sip of water.
Sweet, because then we're going to get into my next couple questions regarding you and content creation. The first one is, why the cat with the goggles and the suit of armor logo? How did that become a thing?
I need to change that.
No, you're keeping it. That is you. You can't change that.
No, so that
you disregard this. You're keeping that because I love it every time I see it.
That was a meme that someone made on an Infinity Facebook meme page that I said, that makes me laugh. Can I use it? And they were like, sure, fill your boots. So there is a character in Infinity called Tariq Mansouri. Mm-hmm. He is the Emir of Quarijaz. He's a Haq Islam super soldier. Basically like Captain America, except Islam. Chad of Chad, super like cool character, etc. And that is a bust that Corvus Belli did of him, but with the picture of a kitten photoshopped in over his face. So that is that's Tariq Meowsuri.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
And it made me laugh, and so I've used it since. But I really should get an actual channel something.
No, that's you, man. That is Robert Shepard right there.
Well, for a very long time before that, I used an avatar of a Lord Coxswain, which is a character which is like a pulp fiction type, like Victorian era hunter, but in science fiction. If you Google that, I've used that for a very long time.
Sorry,
and I might go back to
Lord
something like that.
Coxswain.
Lord Coxswain. He's a
Yeah, that's. I thought that's what I heard. Lord.
Yep.
Cock.
Yeah.
Like cock is spelled like cock, right?
Cockswain. Lord Coxswain. I used that as my avatar for a very long time, but that is, of course, that's IP protected.
Oh damn! Look at that.
So.
Jeez, that guy is. He looks great.
That's fucking cool character.
Yeah, no, this is what I would want for my. Just send you that. Yep, that's what I would want.
I used that as an avatar for ages.
No, I love his mutton chops into his mustache. Yep. Like, if I could grow more facial hair, I would have for sure done that at some point.
So at some juncture, I may eventually get like an actual channel.
Oh, he's from Team Fortress 2?
An actual channel image commission that is something of a hybrid, but custom intellectual property, so I can actually use the damn thing on a channel that makes a very small amount of money. But yeah, that's the story of the cat. The cat in the turban is literally just a dumb Infinity meme.
Novelty mutton chops and pipe. Oh no, it's an item in Team Fortress 2. That's what I was like. What the?
Oh yeah, there was a crossover that they did in.
Yeah, there it is on the soldier. No, that's awesome. That is very yep. You have a beard, right?
I've worn a beard since I was 17. Yeah.
Yeah, is it long enough to just kind of become a Lord Coxswain yourself?
I am terrified. So the thing about wearing a beard since you're 17, I don't exactly know what I look like in the absence of this, but I am pretty terrified as to what I would look like if I shave the beard back to just mutton chops. I do not think I have the chin to carry the mutton, because if you wear mutton chops, you have to have a prominent chin, and I'm not convinced that I do. Pretty sure all of those genes went to the youngest child in the family, who looks like Hercules.
Oh, okay. I do not. Jeez.
So, yeah, my youngest brother David is like the family is in approximate reverse height and athleticism order. Maybe not athleticism, but David is he married recently. He's the youngest brother. Cherish him greatly. He is 6 foot something, and he was the kid who, because he was the youngest child, he was caught in a constant power struggle between me and the middle child, and so he had very low self-esteem growing up, which is something that I kind of regret. But so he was kind of just fat as a kid, and then in uni he was like, well, I should do something about this. And so he started hitting the gym really hard at about the same time as, like, he'd come into his growth spurt, but properly hitting the gym in early uni. And it turned out that underneath that baby fat was literally fucking Hercules. The guy has got a jaw, like, literally you could cut rocks on the chiseled chin that lad has. I do not, and so I am not going to attempt mutton chops. I will continue to wear this beard. I know what is good for me. I'm not going to jeopardize my relationship of pretty close to the same length. Because I'm pretty much under orders as well, where it's just like, no, you're keeping that.
Ah, I see. You've been told what to do.
I mean, it is advice I would have taken from any quarter, but yes. So the beard is absolutely staying, and I've worn it long enough now to be pretty comfortable with it. As it's like, nope, that's what I look like. We're not fucking with this, because everyone who's ever seen the like shaving your face, oh there's a baby underneath that memes.
Yeah,
it's what would happen. So I'm not taking the risk.
No, that's fair. So besides Lord Coxswain, how do you do your thumbnails? I'm curious about that. What's your thumbnail?
I do them.
How do you come up with ideas?
This is the dumbest. Dumbest answer. I do my thumbnails in meme generator.
You want to know something really funny? When I first started making Conquest videos, I also did my thumbnails in meme generator. The problem was that I couldn't crop them properly to fit into the thumbnail thing, so I had to change. I have learned how to do this. So it's open up imager.meme generator, upload the picture I'm going to use as the thumbnail, put in text, because it's a very robust program for putting in text. Yeah, I love that.
Save the image, crop out the fucking imager watermark, upload to YouTube. I should learn how to use Canva. I should absolutely learn how to use Canva. I have not yet.
So I've been using GIMP. What? Yes, takes more time, but man, there's some dumb shit I've done with GIMP for thumbnails that people have seen.
Yeah. That's probably the next thing that I like in terms of learning. I need to learn a little more about audio filters, although I've got those set up now and I'm pretty happy with them. That was one of the things in terms of improving sound quality. You can do a lot more. Like I used to use a Blue Yeti mic, and it was very good quality, but I didn't have like the audio filter set up to make that quality worthwhile, because higher quality microphones produce higher fidelity recordings, but that isn't always what you want. Like unless you're recording ASMR or some shit, the like every indrawn breath. I'll do that I'm going to do that as an April Fool's video one day.
The Infinity ASMR or the Conquest ASMR?
Yeah. I've got it all planned. Yep, it's going to be like a list, like Robert Shepard reviews your list, soft-spoken affirmations. It'll be the worst video I've ever made.
Was it was it Arista? No, I can't even. I'm terrible at pronunciation. I just whacked my mic with my hand. Arista? Is that the other warlord or the other character in City States? It's Polomark. What's the other one that's?
Aristarch.
Aristarch, thank you. Aristarch Warlord. Ooh.
That's a good choice. You've done well. Look at this synergy that you've used in your army.
Done well. That's a good little Conquest player, aren't you? Now stick your head out for some pats. Like just
fucking hell.
That'd be so fucked up.
Yep. I would have to go and find the old microphone. I think it got suborned and is currently sitting on a boom mic over my partner's desk. But I need to learn more. I need to learn more about using good audio filters, and I really need to learn how to use just to not use meme generator for because that software won't necessarily exist forever. And I should learn how to use GIMP or Canva or something. We'll get there eventually. What are you? You're sending me a link, Mass? Yeah.
Yeah, I just told you to just listen to the first 6 minutes of that.
Okay.
That's the closest anyone's probably gonna get to BonkTable ASMR.
Oh dear.
Yeah,
I'm terrified. Your battle reports with the bit at the beginning. I have a very hard time reconciling that with an ASMR experience. So we'll take a look after the stream.
I'm just sending all Robert Shepard all the fun stuff. So if anyone's wondering, this is episode 93, Dweg vs. Spires battle report. I didn't even write Dweg home. I just wrote Dweg. God.
People will know what that means.
They'll figure it out. It's fine. But that is that's the ASMR intro.
Oh god.
Yeah, you'll have fun with that one.
Yep, sure.
Yeah.
What else?
We talked about meme generator. And you don't edit your videos very much when you do your battle reports. So because you don't do because I watch your your Conquest stuff. When I was watching the HeroCon stuff, it's usually a lot of discussion about the lists, about the games, a lot of reasoning why. I really like how in depth you go into for each what you and your opponent's playing and why why these combos, because it just really shows a lot of experience and knowledge about the game, the game that was played on the table, the game system, and kind of what's all going on there. For your battle reports, because the recent one I watched was the HeroCon one. It was usually a picture, and you kind of just discussed about it and how it kind of went. Do you ever think about expanding that? Because I know for my personal thing, I just take a picture of each round and then kind of talk over it and draw arrows it's going over here and why and stuff, and kind of let it play out as a visual of a step-by-step follow of okay, round 1, 2, 3, all the way up till it ends. With your HeroCon one, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So it's a really good question, and I get what you're talking about. So for Infinity battle reports, because Infinity is a 3-round game. Mm-hmm. Plus deployment's important, very important in Infinity. But at most, that means it's a 4-round game, which means I need to take usually 6 to 8 pictures. So I do the same thing for Infinity battle reports. I get a drawing overlay. get the picture of each round on screen, like lots of arrows and circles and crosses, and then like flick through. The thing about Conquest is that Conquest is a 10-round game, and it's a slow burn. It develops slowly, where you have these like deployment, etc. And just what I have found very consistently with Conquest is that if I'm setting out to do a battle report, okay, cool. Taking a photograph from the same angle every round, but then like so much can happen in a round of Conquest. Like Conquest is a game where lots and lots of things happen. Decisions early affect things late, but it's kind of a slow burn in terms of development. It's really damn hard to remember to take those photos and then to just do what I find at least is to do a blow-by-blow battle report for Conquest, something as I have struggled with. And particularly if I'm going to like an event, I don't want to have to remember, like if I'm going to an event, it's to play the event. That's the primary purpose. The primary purpose is not content generation. And so I will take a photo. I can usually remember to take a photo of a game at some point, like maybe after the armies have mostly rolled out onto the field, that I can use as an image from which to springboard a discussion of the game. But trying to meaningfully talk about 50 rounds of play, because that's what a 5-round event would potentially generate, I just don't think it would be. It's a task that is beyond me in terms of the time and energy, and that includes energy at the tournament to remember to take photos and stuff like that. And so the way that I do my event recaps is very much just a concession to those limitations, where it's like, we're going to hit the high notes. We're just going to hit the high notes for every game. We're going to talk about the thing about the game that was interesting, because otherwise the video itself would be way too long. I'd break myself trying to record it, and I'd impede my own enjoyment of the tournament, spending so much of the time at the tournament being like, hey, sorry, let me take a photo. Hey, oh shit, I have to take a photo of that round. Can we just put this thing back? Like all of that kind of crap. It just is not making. I have not yet solved. Not that I've particularly tried very hard, how to make Conquest like interesting as a live stream. Or a videoed content. I feel like you could do a very good Conquest live stream if you had color commentators talking about the game as it was played. But like I watched some of the Amulet D20 live streams, the Podwis versus Emmanuel game.
Yep.
And that was interesting because of the caliber of the players and because they're relatively vocal. But it was interesting more as a question of study. It was interesting to me to watch those two play and interact. It wasn't good entertainment from a content perspective. And so a lot of how I approach doing things like tournament battle reports are just, how do I have 1 or 2 hours of live air? We trim this down. I say trim this down to as tight as I can make it. No, my videos are all way too fucking long. Like way, way too long. A battle report for Infinity does not need to be an hour. But even then, it's all just concession to the fact that wargaming is weirdly difficult to translate from the game experience, which takes about 2 hours, a bit more for Conquest, into an interesting, valuable, consumable piece of media. Making that active translation is not as simple as one-to-one replicating the game, because when you're playing the game, it's cool as hell. I love these games that we play. But spectating a game just in its entirety is like, no, you gotta distill this down. You gotta pull the interesting bits out of it to make it work. And so although a lot of my content is a concession to my own limitations, particularly in terms of time, the rest of how I tend to do things is a concession to, you got to just distill down what's the 1 or 2, particularly for a tournament for 5 rounds. What's the one interesting thing about this game? What's the interesting thing about this matchup? What decided this game? And just present that, and then talk about lists and stuff like that.
Yeah, because I like what you're doing with it. I quite like the Hero. HeroCon is the one I'm going to reference to because it's the one I most recently watched of yours.
Yep.
That I remember.
Yep.
because I like how you did it. Like you focus on the list because a lot of time people like ask what the lists are, but no one goes into further explanation of like why this list worked, what it was doing. So I do enjoy your breakdown of them, and I think that's really smart of what you did there. And on also the high point and what you've previously stated of the trying to make this entertaining. Have you shown up to your local store? There's 6 tables, all of them are filled. Either A, you just finished up a game and your opponent left, or B, you're kind of just, it's local game day, you're hanging out, waiting for another guy to finish up his game so you can play. And you're just kind of sitting there watching a game, and you're watching the players hum and haw. Like, the humming and hawing part is like, dude, guy, come on. Like, this is not a hard decision. You kind of have one direct thing, and you've decided to do something completely different. What's not going to help you. How was this a choice? And
yep.
Or you're just waiting for them to make the thing that you've glanced over. There's no stress on you, so it's easier to make a decision because you're not the one playing it. You're not the one, sorting everything out, looking at all the different stuff. So it's very much, I know from an outside perspective and as an observer, it's very easy for people to just go, why didn't you do that? Why? And it's like, you're not in the game. You're not in the stress of it. You're not in the play of it. You're not looking at stuff. You're not holding everything. You're not physically doing it. There's a difference of just watching someone do a thing and going, oh, I can do that, to actually doing it, and the stuff is in your physical hands.
So I mentioned before, actually, and probably one of the most interesting recent experiences was sitting down to watch the semifinals of Amulet D20.
Yeah.
You can find those all on YouTube. That is that phenomenon that you're describing, where because when you're a spectator, you have distance from the game. You don't have the full context necessarily. You also don't have the immediate emotional investment or the stress of it. And so being like, just do this is easy. The watching any of those live streamed games from Amulet, but yeah, the semifinals are the ones that I watched because I wanted to see Matthews play.
He's world number 1 twice in a row. Like, he's pretty good.
That's why I wanted to see Matthews play. Yes,
Emmanuel is also very good at the game.
Watching Emmanuel and Matthews play, where it actually reminded me in some respects of an Infinity game, because they were talking to one another about decisions that they were making. It's like this. They remember I have they would run through damage math and this is this and how long, what would this charge be? Oh, it would be this. So they played this really collegiate game, very sharp, very well done. But literally, it's kind of like that caliber of player and that caliber of play and that caliber of communication between players is really rare. And even in that game, which is pretty close to high watermark in terms of, as a viewer, being given access to the thoughts and experience and rationale of the players, because usually players are not inclined to talk to their opponent terribly much about the decisions that they're making, because private information, don't give away your secrets, all that kind of stuff, which often is bullshit, but never mind. That was a rare experience just in terms of that. It was high watermark level of communication. There was still an awful lot of dead air. I watched it because access to those players was really, really interesting. But even that, which I would consider one of the best live games I've spectated, was still they're just sitting there rolling dice in their hands and they'll be doing this for the next couple of minutes. Yeah. Had plenty of moments like that, which makes wargaming is not a good spectator sport, but it's an awesome hobby and it's very fun. And so as content creators, our job is to translate all of, either if you're doing a live stream, it's to fill the space while players are sitting there rolling dice in their hands trying to figure out what to do, or for battle reports and for podcasts, it's to take all of the things that are cool and either explain or express them to an audience in a way that is actually consumable.
Yeah, I agree with you. Some other battle report channels, because when I started into War Machine, I watched a lot of battle reports. There's was it Wargamer Girl? Her old War Machine stuff. I think she mostly does podcasting now. Super nice lady. Her War Machine battle reports, I think, are some of the best because it gets into those close stops. It shows which unit is fighting which unit, where everything is, gets to the dice rolling so you can see it, but it cuts out all the dead space and just has her narrating it and talking about this is what's happening and going on. So it's very thematic. And if I scroll down here, her videos are about 20 to 30 minutes, averaging around the low 20s mark. What's pretty good for
That's probably ideal.
Yeah, it's like if you're watching a half-hour TV with commercials removed. What is kind of the ideal time of just eating a meal while watching a thing. But her stuff from 7 to 8 years ago, even longer, is some of the best like battle report stuff I've seen. Another one would be mini wargaming, because they do the handheld camera, they give you an overview, they show like who is fighting who, but they also cut down a lot of the dead space. So it's and that's why I think like play on tabletop does so well, is because they cut out a lot of the dead space deliberations you see in long format content, like those live games. I think it was Advanced Maneuvers was another War Machine. Advanced Maneuvers. If I can spell maneuvers.
Better you than me.
Yeah, there it is. Advanced Maneuvers was another War Machine. Content creator. Yep, there they do. They got stuff from even a month ago. But one of the things they did was that they would have their opponents, the two players, play, and then they would record that game in real time. And then when they went back, they would have each opponent, when it was their turn, talk over the decision points while playing at 2 or 3 times speed as they got to each thing. You would usually see it link up to what they were touching the minis at the time on screen. And so those moved pretty quick and gave you a lot more explanation of why they were doing stuff, what they were doing, how they were doing it, all that stuff. And it cut out a lot of that dead space as well. So I think it's mostly just like removing as much dead space as possible from a war game battle report to just make them flow.
Let me tell you the big problem with that.
Okay, go. Yeah, please.
It's a lot of fucking work.
I know.
And that's what fundamentally the tension comes down to, is you're never gonna, very, very, very few people can make a career or even like reasonable supplementary income, which means out of YouTubing, which means it's got to be a hobby. And because it's a hobby, you got to do it in a way that is fun and sustainable to you, which means you've got to do it. Like if there's people in the audience who are like, I would like to do some of this. Like, yeah, it's not difficult to record and to publish. Making a YouTube channel is not hard. You have one by default, I think, if you have a Google account.
Yeah.
But if you wanna actually like do it longer term, it's got to be something that is mentally and emotionally and creatively sustainable. And those kind of like really good quality battle reports, I've watched so much Guerrilla Miniatures games.
I love his stuff.
Ash is a fucking legend. The people he has to play, like Owen is like one of his regular opponents. Owen is, I think, the best player in Canada. I think he's won the last like 3 major events that they've had. And so like this, good. It's good caliber of play. But Ash is a rare example of someone who has managed to make actually a multi-game, like he's effectively like a variety channel.
Mm-hmm.
He covers lots of different games. He covers them well. But doing that kind of like live and then edited, it's a ton of work. If you're full time, if it's your job, that's one thing. If it's not your job, it's got to be sustainable. And so if you're interested in doing a podcast or a video channel, whatever, it's just always got to be, it's fun, it's cool, it's interesting, it's a whole new set of skills to learn, but it's got to be done in a way that you can sustain creatively. And a lot of the time, I've had a lot of people, actually, feedback I have on my videos is like, oh, it would be really cool if you added this feature. And it's like, yeah, I agree, it would be, but it would increase the amount of time it takes me to do a video by like 200%. I can't. I literally don't have time to do these. It's got to be something that I can enjoy and put a bit of energy into, but not consuming. And so you've got to find the meaningful limits to the quality of stuff you can produce, and then figure out ways to make the workflow better. Good old fucking workflow optimization to make the same amount of energy produce a better content. And that's why, like for me, for example, one of the next things I'm going to have to learn is how to use a non-meme generator thumbnail.
No, it works great. I would not change it.
so that I have but there's extra things that I could do, and it might be easier if I got better at it. So anyway,
that's fair.
But yeah, I think that's probably the sum total of things I have to say about content creation, to be honest. Because I'm circling back a little at this point, but yeah, it's been fun. I've enjoyed doing it. I've enjoyed a lot that people find it valuable, and my intention is to kind of continue doing it because it's a cool secondary hobby that complements wargaming really well.
No, I agree. I'm like, I've kind of talked on and off. Like, there's kind of a bunch of little reasons. I don't want to say they're little, but there's a bunch of big reasons and little reasons why I did BonkTable and started doing this. And like, one of them was that I found there was a hole in just getting information out to the player base.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the big reasons why I also did content creation. I can say for your workflow, because you use what you do very little editing. Like, I don't use the pause button when I record with OBS. I record the whole thing raw. I throw it into DaVinci Resolve, and I sit there. And depending on the size of it, I'll either like have it play at 2x speed so I can hit the various breaks and cut them up and like tone it down. But like, I remember my first video, what I think is like either 20 or 30 minutes long, taking me 4 to 5 hours to actually edit.
Yep.
Yeah, and now it's down to like an hour.
Yep. So I record and I mostly live edit in OBS.
Mm-hmm.
If I need to do editing, I use Movani Video Editor Plus, which gives me most of the tools that I need.
Nice.
But only occasionally do I need to do that.
Do you so you kind of just like, if everything works out, you just kind of like throw out the raw file, like you don't really do much editing? Because like, I go in and I adjust the screen to make sure that it fills the screen and there isn't like side panels on the side from when I just throw it in like paint to draw arrows on everything. What else do I have to say about
I have everything set up.
Wow. Okay,
so that probably 9 videos in 10. It's just the raw recording that goes up on YouTube. One take, done.
Damn, guess I gotta go do this, because like I put transitions, I put the point score thing on and adjust that post record.
Yeah, and that's really good, and I should probably do that if I had more time.
So here's the thing, like, because of DaVinci Resolve, I literally like copy and paste a lot of the stuff from the previous video into the next video, so it speeds that all up because it's just already done. Hey, okay, so we're just quick back. Might have forgot where I was, but anyway, we talked about content, talked about how to do stuff.
We talked about content creation so much, and then I had been drinking water for 2 hours, and if I didn't use the bathroom, I was going to die. So, to peer behind the curtain there, I am feeling so much better right now. The urgency has probably left my voice. But I do suspect we've probably exhausted, at least for purposes of your audience, most of the peer behind the curtain, how does this content creation stuff work?
I do want to mention one thing, but that I have done recently that no one will notice and no one will take effect in. So everyone knows how I do battle reports. I just take a picture of each round and talk over them and explain stuff. Sometimes, like you said before with the pictures, that players remove stuff. Well, because I take a photo of the previous round, something I have done is that, and if stuff like hasn't moved it too much, is that I'll actually cut out the thing. Like, let's say it's we'll use my last game was an Apex Predator. It got removed, but I literally just cut it out from the previous picture, threw it in, and just rotated it to where it should be. And like, you'll never notice. You might notice if you're looking at its tail, because I cut out some of my opponent's pants along the way, and I was like, yeah, no one's gonna bother with this. But most of the time, a lot of people don't notice when I do stuff like that, or why. And there have been times where I've thought of just getting a photo of the mat, cutting out the regiments, and like just kind of grabbing them and like just move them forward in the recording, just so people see that motion, and if that would actually like add more or less. And I do agree with you. It really just comes down to how much work do we as content creators want to put in to this, and like how much we're getting back out of it. There's been a couple times where like put in like 6 hours on something that, to be honest, really did not have a great payoff.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be any of this stuff. Anyone who's interested in getting into this stuff, it's fun. It's cool to do content creation, but you've got to do it for like your enjoyment. And one of the roughest things you can do is and it will happen, is you put tons of work into a video, and then because the algorithm is fucking poison, it just doesn't perform well. And so if you evaluate your success on like a view count, you will that way madness lies so badly. Like YouTube is a terrible platform. It actively punishes any attempt to vary content. It's just pish. But so you've got to just make stuff where the primary audience is yourself, and the secondary audience is anyone else who happens to enjoy it. And you've got to measure your success that way by how much fun you're having. Because, God, trying to chase metrics on YouTube is it's miserable stuff. I had a segue there, but it's gone because we've been talking for a while now.
I know. Do you have a Patreon?
I use channel memberships. And
okay.
I have some people who members that way. And I didn't want to set up a Patreon. I probably should have, and at some point I might move there. There's a platform called Buy Me a Coffee, which is it's much better. So Patreon, from memory, doesn't really have an option for like one-off donations. Patreon, and they do this because it's efficient monetization. Patreon kind of locks people into ongoing support for all of the same reasons that like software subscriptions exist and are a thing these days, because it is an efficient monetization method. I've got a little Buy Me a Coffee because people can do ongoing support there. Memberships, the marginal membership sucks, but it's easy. But I wanted something where if someone wanted to just do a like, hey, thanks, I enjoyed your content, here's a coffee. Specifically because it wasn't a platform that is optimized for long-term monetization. Patreon, however, is more robust. I might move to it at some point. But yeah, I have a little Buy Me a Coffee page.
Oh, that's cool. I've been asked to put a Patreon onto BonkTable, and like, I feel like some people don't understand like what some of the background of BonkTable is, and it's usually explained more in older episodes of like this is a hobby first. If at some point I truly do not enjoy doing this, I will stop. I might do a little like outro of like, hey, I've stopped. I might even just stop producing it because I just don't give enough of a damn. But like, one of the things is like, this is free content, free knowledge, free talks, free discussion about this. It's not locked behind any paywall. So I also thought if I was ever to do a Patreon, it would be like if there was enough subscribers to justify it, and also it would literally be nothing would be locked behind it. No additional awards. It would literally just be you wanna support, and to be honest, that money would either go towards not an editor. We can't do that. That's too efficient. Probably my artist who's a local friend of mine who made my logo and all the various little bits of more cartoony watermelonish art that people have seen and that I use on occasion. It would be more towards her and her work, because I just value her art and what she does more than this, to be honest. And that's what the Patreon money would truly actually just go to, is paying her. Like, I already pay her already, but then it'd be paid from the viewers instead of me. So I'd probably just give her more money.
Yeah, it's that like, if you set up monetization, it's like, because you've got to figure out at that point, once you're saying you can give money, it becomes what is the value? What is the value proposition? Why? And you start opening all sorts of doors that are not necessarily bad, but especially a Patreon. That kind of platform is designed to be a community. You start doing things like, well, is Discord access gated? No, that's just for subscribers. It's just a little community. You either have to make it not particularly important or the entire purpose. And I think we've all seen a lot of channels whose reach has exceeded their grasp and who have badly overestimated the potential buy-in for people who are interested in like the monetized aspect. I think weirdly, probably the most like you see a fair bit in wargaming podcasts, things where they try and push monetization way before a channel is ready. But even there is a geopoliticist who I follow on YouTube called Peter Zeihan. You have to take everything he says with a grain of salt because he has one area of expertise, which is demographics, and he tries to apply that area of expertise to everything, which is not always. Okay. Peter Zeihan has successfully predicted 17 of the last 3 significant geopolitical crises, kind of thing. He's that kind of person, but is interesting, and particularly if you pull out the bits about demographics, it's interesting in that respect as well. But he had a channel called Zeihan on Geopolitics. He makes his money. His career is effectively running what's borderline a think tank. Does talking circuits, provides geopolitical advice, etc. Someone in his organization was like, "Oh, hey, these little videos that you do, these like daily videos talking about specific topics, let's monetize that behind a Patreon." And they this was an established organization with a lot of expertise that was like, this is not niche like wargaming. Geopolitics is a big deal. And they still overestimated the speed at which a conversion could successfully be made. And what they did with their monetization was Patreons will get videos when they're released, everyone else will get them like 2 weeks later. Turns out that the relevance of a geopolitical topic over 2 weeks, that's a long 2 weeks is a long fucking time in politics. Christ. And so I still watch those videos from time to time when they are interesting and are still relevant. But like a video about Ukraine's peace talks that is released on YouTube 2 weeks after it's recorded is like, well, it's going to change in that time. This is not a good. This is a. Yeah. I think they're actually walking away from it a little bit because they've kind of realized like this is not the money. Like you can't just paywall this shit. I know perhaps you thought you could because when you're in that industry of like think tank geopolitical advice, you think you can paywall everything, but it did not work in this particular case. And that's for an established organization that is like well known and relatively respected expertise and etc. So if you are doing wargaming content as a hobby, Patreon should be so far down your list of people should be asked once lots of people have asked you to be like, oh, can you make a Patreon? That's the point at which you're like, okay, maybe I will do something like that at this stage. But yeah, this is not a hobby you can pick up for the money.
Yeah, hold on. I just need to Google because I'm friends with these 85,000 subs for this Magic the Gathering Commander YouTube channel that I know some of the people on there. Mostly because they live local to me and we attend the same parties and social events, and I pet the guy's dog. That's Spike Feeders, everyone wants to know. They're EDH channel. But anyway, when I first started, I talked to them about how to do YouTube, how like some editing stuff, background stuff, because like a lot of people don't know where to go, and a lot of it is just like, who has this knowledge, who does something similar, can I ask some questions? And if you are starting out, I would strongly recommend, like, if you ask me an editing or a video software question in my DMs, I'll answer it. I'll tell you what I use, how I find it, any tips and tricks I can give you to help you out. Pretty friendly guy. So like asking other people who do that, or you have some connection through, or I strongly recommend if you're getting into this. But I asked them about editing and like software they use. But yeah, and one of the things was like, what about a Patreon? Because that's always a thing you see, especially on YouTube, is like, subscribe to my Patreon or join my Patreon, because it's guaranteed money for that creator who's a full-time creator, while there's very few miniature wargaming creators that are full-time.
Audience is too small.
Yeah, it really is. And also it's all tied to the game you play. Like Warhammer is going to have the biggest audience simply because it is Warhammer. While like Conquest, War Machine, Infinity, I feel is going to be much nicher. I don't even have to feel it; I just know it. It is much nicher.
Doing Magic the Gathering or 40k, it is not long-term monetizable. It's niche. It's very fun. You might make a little bit off of things like views, etc., but you cannot make it a career if you're covering any of the cool games.
Yeah. So.
Got to be Games Workshop or Wizards if it's going to be. The audience for them is large enough to be like 85,000 subscribers, yeah, and more. Like the big channels, absolutely. But you got to do it. You got to find like if to do content creation, you've got to figure out why you're doing it, and it's got to basically be a hobby. And I don't think I've mentioned this in the discussion at all. But it is something that's like, Rob, why do you actually make videos?
Yeah, Rob.
And I spent long, yeah. So this is a question I have been asked, but the answer to me is funny. I spent a long time trying to find a way to say, without using the word spite, without saying I am motivated by spite. And so the phrase that I have come up with that is probably like some of the videos that I have most enjoyed making are a product of, let's call it productive contrarianism, where there is nothing quite like seeing an absolute dogshit bad take on the internet and going, well, that person's fucking wrong. And now my creative juices are flowing, and I am going to write a list that uses that model they said was bad, or play a game with the faction they said is terrible, or even just like probably one of the like watershed moments. There is a video that I made called, it's like playing against guided missiles, or guided missiles and how to deal with them. Because in Infinity, one of the tools that exists for players is missiles. This is what it sounds like, where if you can land a target, like if you can use your hacking or a forward observer to mark a target, and you've got the pieces in your army, you can call in what is effectively a like micro artillery barrage. And all of that thing I talked about, how Infinity is this game where like line of sight and gunfighting is really important. Turns out being able to use a fucking missile to shoot someone from across the board outside line of sight is very powerful. It's just that making it work requires all of these steps. In the 4th edition in N4 Infinity, some of the handbrakes that they put on, so in 2nd edition, which I didn't play, guided missiles were OP as hell. In 3rd edition, they just tamped them down and they were like a meme play. You could never make them work. In 4th edition, they brought them back to a point where it's like, okay, you can put, and where they fit in even today in Infinity is that it's so resource intensive to make a guided missile play work that it's very rarely a good idea to have it as a plan B. Rolling up a big gun and firing a bunch of shots is usually much better at suppressing an enemy target than going through like, you know that gymnastics meme where it's the like the 2 different gymnastics routines.
Oh yeah.
Yep, that's guided missile. Like it's like the move a repeater area forward, expend your hacking network, pass some spotlight rolls, designate the target, move the missile into position, fire the missile, maybe get a kill versus shoot with gun.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of but because people had spent all of 3rd edition Infinity playing, not having to deal with these, and then they came back in 4th edition, and they represent a kind of attack that people weren't really prepared to deal with. There was this whole fucking dialogue about how guided missiles were overpowered, and kind of consistently, like you had people who, like, the camps were split into, okay, cool, whatever, I don't care, if I lose to it, I'll lose to it, I'm not that hardcore, and people who were like, yeah, actually, no, here's how you deal with this. And there was a small, and it always tends to be these fucking people. There was this vocal cohort of players who let's politely describe them as competitive, but not top table competitive. Players who are pretty good, but have not quite broken through to the like consistent high win rate kind of level. And that's exactly the cohort that you will generally see passionately bad takes from. And there is nothing I find more motivating than like that shit and me being like, all right, here's why you're wrong. And so I made this video because there was so much like guided missiles are overpowered. And it's like, no, you are just mentally unprepared and you're playing against them wrong. And they're subverting some of your expectations. There are arguments we can make about how you should how maybe they should be changed or toned down, but they're in the game right now. Here's how you deal with them. Stop whinging. It's like that non-productive whinging. Some games.
We've seen that in Conquest as well.
Yeah, Conquest is. Let me get back to that. But
please continue with Infinity.
Let me come back to that. But there's this. So, and I made a video that was just like I got so riled up seeing people constantly prattle on about this. I'm like, sure, I'm just going to do a video about how to play against guided missiles. Hopefully, it'll be. And it wasn't like a call out video. It wasn't fucking drama. It was. I keep getting like. I am emotionally invested in this discussion now, and there are a bunch of people I think who are giving other people bad information. This is hopeless. You can't play against this. Blah blah blah. I go, okay, cool. Let's just put my perspective out there in a way that I hope is useful to people. And turned out it was. And I think that was the first video that I ever made that was like a explanation tactic. It wasn't just a battle report. It wasn't just a commentated game. And I have since found that that's the kind of content. It's more effort because I got to like figure out what I'm going to say, but that's the content that actually does the best. That's got the longest tail on it that people come back to because it's consistently interesting. That kind of like, hey, here's how to think about this topic. Here is a perspective on this topic. So like my faction focus videos where I talk about like in Conquest, I think I've done 100 Kingdoms and Sorcerer Kings, and I'll try to eventually get to all of them. And then they'll be hopelessly out of date because Conquest is
within 3 to 4 months.
Yep. But like I've done this with Infinity ones. That all came from productive contrarianism, where you see someone with a bad take, and you kind of have a couple of options. You could ignore it. You could engage with it like Carl does, which is to combat misinformation on the Discord directly.
Yeah.
Or
Carl goes toe to toe. He's like, hold on, I gotta put my boots and gloves on for this one.
Yep. Suit up. Yep. Or you can be like, actually, I can use this as a springboard to come up with a video idea and then do the video. And so I probably like way too many of my videos have been motivated by seeing someone say something dumb and deciding I'm not gonna wade into this on a Discord. I'm not gonna tear strips off of this person. They got a perspective, it's perfectly reasonable. But I disagree. So let's turn that into 2 hours of content. Bam, we're going. And that is such a motivator, and I find it motivates me specifically. However, sorry, comma.
That's
the
good.
living rule set. Do I want to get into this? Hell, why not?
Yeah, you're on BonkTable. You can say whatever you want. Like we're not held to whatever system or company wants over us. I'm sorry, but I do not look the feet that the game I play.
Well, this is the long perspective of history. This is this kind of perspective that you pick up with 25 or something years in wargaming. Is the benefit, the costs as well as the benefits of living rule set and responsive developers. And one of the and it's an externality because overall I think having a living rule set is pretty good. The only notable negative externality is the subsequent quality of the conversation in the community, which can take a fucking nosedive because Conquest has updates every 3 times a year usually, and there are a lot of benefits to that. The rule set stays novel. It can be adjusted over time. If there's something that needs amending, the devs can do it. As a factor of novelty, that's really useful. You get the game to stay fresh. But one of the costs, there are a couple of costs. The first cost is that if you're a casual player and the game moves too quickly, you can't keep up. You're like, well, if you have someone who plays 1 game a month, they get 3 games before the rules change. Or 4 games before the rules change. And managing their experience is tricky because they're still a consumer. They still buy your product. But the other great cost of a living rule set is, so in Infinity, for example, there are updates from time to time, but they are not at a hugely regular cadence, and they tend to be significant when they occur. But apart from FAQs around hey, this rule is not written correctly, we revised it to actually indicate what it's meant to be doing, you don't get big core rules changes, and you get model profile changes only occasionally. Which means that in Infinity, most of the time, if you're like, hey, I'm having trouble with this thing, I think it's bullshit, well, it may not ever get changed, so the only solution is to figure out how to deal with it. There is no plan B. Like, that's the baseline assumption in Infinity. Is like, guided missiles are bullshit. Well, you can stop playing. Don't do that, because this game is awesome. Or you can learn defensive techniques. You can learn how to defend with distance and spacing and counter hacking and hidden AROs that stop network projection and etc. 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 Those are your options, right? The primary way of dealing with something you think is too powerful is to learn to play against it. A thing happens in communities where you have responsive developers, and it has happened a little bit in Conquest, where the primary way of dealing with something you think is overpowered is to complain until the developers fix it.
Yep.
And that is the only thing about Conquest that I kind of like. There's no way to engage productive contrarianism, which is such a great motivator, doesn't work when people's takes are just playing the refs to try and get models nerfed. And I have not yet figured out what the solution to that problem is. There may not be one. It may just be a cost. It may just be a cost that you pay to get all of the benefits of a living rule set. But damn, like, you go into the Discord sometimes, and like, I think this is like half of the reasons that Carl dons the hazmat suit and goes in to talk to various different people who have bad takes, I swear that half of those takes are just that phenomenon, where it's like, I lost a game to this, and it would be a whole bunch of work for me to learn how to play against it and implement counter tactics and change my list construction, so I'm going to whinge on the Discord and hope that the devs see it and that it gets nerfed. And like, I don't know what to do about that, but that is you mentioned this before, and it lodged in my head, and I have used this as a platform to talk about my one pet peeve.
You sure can. No, I agree with you. So I'll talk from a little bit personal experience and also Conquest. Is that you know, I don't have to tell you. Do you remember? You do remember Ash and Dawn when they first came out. How backbreaking was that to I don't know, everyone else?
I wasn't. So I was playing against Ashen Dawn. So my memory of original Ashen Dawn was that they were in the rule set, but didn't have models, but they had their rules.
Mm-hmm.
And I played one of the games that taught me not to play with unreleased profiles. Cough, Weaver's Wild Hunt. Stop talking about Wild Hunt Weavers. The profile doesn't exist yet. Cough. I played, I think, 2 games against Ashen Dawn with a Water Mage back when they were at their apex of bullshit and could be healed.
Yeah, good.
And it was like, this is probably not okay. This is very strong. Oh, it's an unreleased profile. That's why. That's how we learned. But yes, I do remember. And okay. Yeah, I remember Ashen Dawn going through the entire cycle of like great to terrible to actually they've never been terrible, but like the great 6 they went from 6 attacks to 5 attacks.
And also like every update they got another 10 points increased. And also every time. Yeah,
and then now you can't take them in more than MSUs. Okay, I guess you can have your
we're back to full units now. You can add additional stands.
If you're willing to pay, there's what that
it's like 90 points per mini.
willing to pay 80 points per mini.
Dude,
to get
he owns
Dawn.
30 Ashen Dawn. He showed a picture where he's playing 8,000 points on like a 12x4 table, and he's got like 2 10 blocks of Ashen Dawn running around. It's like, fuck off, Huckleberry.
Boom.
Stop smashing us all to death with this damn thing.
Force concentration is powerful. Yeah. They do it.
So, thing I want to talk about and why Ashen Dawn, and like we just explained that they were backbreaking, ball busting, is that when Ashen Dawn came out, people were like, "Wow, 100K is overpowered." And it's like, well, this was also the summer of the start of version 2. So version 2 came out in January. They released in July, August-ish. So there was about like a 3 or 4 month gap where 100K was kind of in the dumpster because it just didn't have a lot going for it at the time. Ash and Dawn literally propped up the entire faction for quite a while. And
yes, yeah, before the rework.
It hit its apex where there was 88 Ash and Dawn out of 10 players at Adepticon. So each 100K player was running 8 Ash and Dawn stands in all of their lists. You know, plus or minus, because that's how actual, but this is averaging. So that's quite of a tell of what's going on. Then it gets down to player skill and everything, but, you know, 100 play players did pretty decent there. But one of the things that I remember is also the discussion around Ash and Dawn, and also using, as you said, it's not spite driven. It's kind of like, here's some information or another take. Using the content and content creation to put out that other take, and also discuss like why Ash and Dawn are good, what they're going to be good into, and then how to counter Ash and Dawn. So I talked about like using magic, using range attacks primarily, getting AP, getting cleave. Cleave with volume is another good one, and also flanking them from the side to get a bit of that reroll, but also reducing the damage coming into them. So like
anything that bypasses blessed, etc.
Yeah, so like magic and shooting. So like any of that stuff, and or hitting the one unit of Ash and Dawn with 2 regiments in the same turn to burn up that blessed. So there was a lot of tools and stuff like that I on BonkTable like gave out to the community to be like, this is how Ash and Dawn is strong. They want to do single regiment fights each turn to their front arc where they can just kind of hammer in, kill it, move on to the next one, and kind of keep chewing their way through that. They'll get into a brawl, they're fine. But you as the opponent, how are you going to counter this? And so like that information was out there for players, but it was still a lot of just like bitching Ash and Dawn are OP, and I like coming from a War Machine background, especially like a Mark II War Machine background where they did FAQs. I think when Rias, who's a Legion of Everbright caster, was the first time they did an FAQ and actually changed a rule or added a rule was Rias had a 1/2 inch melee, and they gave her reach for 2 inches in the FAQ because like War Machine used to be all on like cards, like, you know, playing cards or whatever, their stats.
So errating those cards was difficult.
Yeah. And they eventually just moved on to digital and like Mark III. Like you could print out the cards, but everyone just played off the app at that point. So it's a lot easier to update. So yeah, it was a lot of that where it's like I was just used to, as a war gamer from the game I grew up with or heavily played, was that you got to figure out a way to deal with this. You either got to diversify your list if this this is coming, what it is. You need to use a different strategy and just set up better. And that's why whenever I play Conquest, it's like I put more stock in value of where my units are and what their position is to receive and do damage to my opponent.
Yep.
And those types of discussion I value more, but due to the living rule set, it's kind of just like, oh well, this is OP as fuck. Let's just wait 3 to 4 months and it'll be fine. And like, I'm gonna be really honest, that's one of there's playing Conquest at the level I play it at, doing the content creation, following the community on the Discord and Reddit and Facebook and all that, even sometimes, or in their personal Discords, even though I don't reply because, you as one person, you can't just sit there. Like, I have a life. This is a hobby at the end of the day, but I put a lot of time and energy into this hobby. The 3 times update a year, I think, is too much. And as you previously stated, like, it doesn't allow a guy who plays once a month to kind of get settled in before the rules change. It doesn't allow players to actually build upon their own skill and find solutions themselves or to discover solutions while discussing with the player base. It doesn't encourage personal growth as much as I myself value, and that's fine if people don't want to do that. Like, you're your own person, you're an adult. I hope. I know there's some children who actually do watch this. If you're a child, go hang out with your dad. Go make a birdhouse. I don't know. I don't.
The youngest player in my community is school age. His name is Joey, and he's a fucking legend. But,
okay, Joey.
He's got a very good learning heuristic.
Hey, you know what? Everyone should be Joey then. Joey's cool. But yeah, it's really just like I would like to see the player base actually discuss this and not just whinge about it the entire time. Like, don't get me wrong, there's stuff to whinge about. I don't know if anyone's played Mud Sorcerer Kings yet, but it was described as a colon cleaner, and then I proceeded to got my colon cleaned. It's really rough. So, like...
I mean, yeah, I am of the opinion that the developers should not include infinite range offensive abilities
same.
in the game. I do think that should be changed. But for as long as it exists, I will try and figure out how to deal with it with the tools that I've got.
Yeah, or how to reduce damage.
It's a tricky one because you don't need a high signal to whinge ratio for the whinge to feel really overpowering. I think if you actually if you were really dispassionate and you jump onto the Discord, you would actually find that the signal to whinge ratio, even on the big Discord, it's not actually that bad. There's a lot of plenty of good discussions. It's just that it doesn't take a lot of whinge for that to feel dominant because it stands out. So even if it's actually in a pretty good spot, the fact that there is a portion of the community who will be like, I'm going to complain, I'm going to play the refs and complain about this, that's the optimal strategy. It was worse in War Machine during the public testing days. My fucking god, was
CID?
Yep, community. Were you there for that?
Oh, 100%. 100%. My god, CID.
I have memories of that are so strong. Because it was one of those ones where before CID, you would always hear, because that was the era of people would be like, StarCraft, how StarCraft is consistently balance adjusted and it's so good and it's so competitively tight. What if war games should be like that, without thinking what they were really asking for and what the iteration cycle of a war game is? We're like, dude, a StarCraft player can play 300 games a week. You can play 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 if you're full on.
Dude,
shut your fucking hole.
4 games a week War Machine. That's what I was doing when I first started. Being a college student is perfect for wargaming, especially War Machine, because while doing college, you're in a mindset of learning and testing new stuff. So makes it actually really good for wargaming growth and the stuff you're doing to really just exceed and excel. And then also getting 4 games a weekend was we're going.
But there was when community, so Privateer Press was like, sure, we'll experiment with this, and they began this program called Community Integrated Development, which Mass is familiar with, which I'm familiar with, but for the audience was basically it was regimented and it was structured, but it was here are playtest documents, provide playtest and provide your feedback, prove that you've played games, tell us about the games that you played, tell us about the results, and they put safeguards in place, but that did not stop. Well, so you may remember the name Octavius Maximus was the handle online.
Oh, fucking Christ!
We know it. You remember?
Oh well,
and he was face up. If you talk to him about it, he would say, "Turn 0 of War Machine is working the refs to get your faction buffed and your opponent's faction nerfed. That's the optimal." And he was really face up about this, where he's like, "The optimal way for me to win the game is to talk the devs into buffing my faction. That's how I win." And he was really clear about it. And then he did it. And sometimes it worked. And it was just this is why we can't fucking have nice things. Now, I have never seen in the community in Conquest, for example, because the line of input is opaque, which is so important. If you're gonna do Conquest style living rule set, you cannot let players draw a 1-to-1 line between them whinging and them winning games. It's still that line is maybe very slightly too visible in Conquest sometimes.
I would like it to be less that. Get that thing under the rug. Throw it out the window. In community
integrated development era War Machine, there was such a clear throughput from you bullshitting and you winning games that a small number of bad actors were like, that program does not exist anymore, and this is why. Octavius Maximus is why. And so I have had huge antipathy toward whinging about war games with the subtle hope of getting your shit buffed basically ever since. And credit to the Conquest community for never reaching that level. Occasionally you'll see someone who goes I went 0-3 with Weavers at this event on the weekend, and therefore Weavers are terrible. It's but even they were not. They were genuinely not. That's a misrepresentation, and they were not actually engaging in that kind of bullshit.
Well, that comes to the question, what were you playing? How were you playing? Because I always remember, there's a developer interview I did with Leandros couple years back at this point, where players came to him and saying Dweg needs to be buffed, and this is during the time where Dweg is like just committing war crimes out of the extreme. Like the Hag wasn't invented yet, and there was problems. And so Leandros was like, "What do you mean they need buffs?" And so he dug a little deeper, and they're playing only clans Dweg, and this is before clans was like a full sub faction. Well, he's like, well, you're ignoring the wizard aspect of Dweghome that ties it together and also gives a lot of your power. Well, it's like, well, we just want Warhammer Fantasy dwarves, and it's like he's like, I can't help you. That's not what Dweghome is. That's not how we designed the faction. That's not how this game is played. You're like Dweghome is, if you want to compare it to fantasy, is closer tied to Chaos dwarves than actual fantasy dwarves. Play it like that, you have a much better time. And they just kind of like whined to him about it, and it was like, okay, he did the digging and found out like there was this expectation that wasn't there, and that's like you and I have both talked to Carl, Mr. Hazmat, and one of the things that like when there's a big update happens, I was talking to him about this the other day, is that a lot of players will try and take what was good before the update and try to push it into what's currently happening in the game after the update, and then going, well, my thing doesn't work anymore, so it's bad. It's like, well, it's not bad. It's just you need to get rid of your past lists and I don't want to say experience, but your like how you perceive the game, and start over again at zero. And you reclimbing that ladder is just your knowledge of how this game is played and all that to get back up to your point. So there's going to be a couple games of trying some stuff, seeing how it works, trying new ideas, changing it up. You can't just do a direct one-to-one comparison. It just doesn't work. It's not as good anymore, or sometimes it's just even worse.
That's such a tricky one to tell. So my Dweghome example, by the way, is Old Dominion, where I think there has never been a faction in Conquest history that is more consistently complained about than Old Dominion, no matter where they are. Like Old Dominion, I think Old Dominion right now are a very powerful faction, but they're very powerful because of things like the Hatarios and stuff like Athanati and some individual units and how those units key into. They're a sort of like unevenly powerful faction.
Yeah, like their top is the top and their bottom is the. I wouldn't say the bottom, but it's like why you take this? It's like I can grab Ranking Guard. Like it's.
But Old Dominion are a faction that you have exactly that kind of player, the kind of player who goes to the dev and goes, I am playing Zero Wizard Dweghome and it's bad. Please buff Dweghome. And you get players who will go and say, I threw a punch at an Old Dominion unit and I didn't kill it and I lost the game because I did not mentally account for the math on lack of resolve damage. Please nerf Old Dominion. And you're like, well, actually, Old Dominion are getting fucking murdered in competition right now. So how do we square that circle? And it's actually, I think the Conquest devs understand and do a pretty good job of. You actually do have to account for both of those perspectives. You just need to have both of those perspectives in their totality. Like the example that you've given about Leandros, that's actually a super useful perspective to have as a piece of information when you dig into it, is that there are Dweghome players who want a certain experience, they're trying to get it, and they can't because Dweghome are built around their wizards, than they were at the time, and they kind of still are.
Yep. You can play more clans now, but it's still... Yep. You're becoming the Wizard King, Harry. Like, let's get on to casting some fire magic.
A developer can do something with... A developer can do something with knowing what the experienced players want or what some players want. They can work with that. What they can't work with is this is overpowered, this is underpowered, zero context, and yeah.
Well, I was literally like at time of recording, Reese's Parabellum developer interview episode is out. Strongly recommend listening to that one when you.
I look forward to listening to that.
But he mentions the same thing because he's a developer and he does track a lot of the stuff that is talked about, but he also there's a word, it's not like hardened, but like he prepares himself for the takes, or is this truly bad, or he does a little bit of digging kind of thing of like what's actually going on. So he does the legwork of is this just a complaint with no context? Because constructive criticism is actually hard to provide. Some people are like, oh, I can give constructive criticism, but like true deep constructive criticism is actually a skill in itself, providing that to people and also doing it in a way that they can learn and understand from it.
And it's not usually, you're not in a position to give it. If you just had a game that you've lost to something, you're not in a mental position to actually offer constructive criticism. You've got to work out some emotions at that point, and you're going on a Discord to do it.
Mm-hmm. And if I don't want to, like, if you're in a good group, what usually happens is you have the game, you get beat, you go, okay, what did I do good? What did I do bad? What can I do? What was kind of decent, but I can improve on better? And usually with those three questions, your opponent can just give you some help and advice, or you can talk to opponent. It's like, hey, on this side of the field, I kind of was like thinking I was in a strong position, but then I charged out because you're threatening me, and your opponent could be like, yeah, I put that there, but I really didn't have a follow up. If you just kind of stood around and just kept your current position, you getting antsy and attacking me first now left you exposed for this other unit that was going to take 2 turns to get there. But now you were closer because you did a march charge, so now I could get to you and kind of wipe it out. And you didn't really do enough damage to that first unit, so now I had 2 versus your 2, and like we could have traded.
There are so many decisions that go into a win or a loss in Conquest. Yeah, and model power definitely is an impact, but it's not the only thing.
Yeah, and it's a discussion like that, because I usually find a lot of this game is like, when you deployed, was your unit in the proper spot to get the most effect out of? And when you brought your army up to fight your opponent's army, were you in a cohesive unit? Like, army-wide, was there cohesion of protecting each other's flanks, being ready for follow-ups, not getting over-aggressive or under-aggressive to either give up or, give up scenario, or to push scenario so much that you kind of get stomped and your opponent scores it out. Like, there's many factors like that in a game of Conquest that, with the complaining online, just doesn't tell you what's really going on unless there's like a deeper analysis.
I think I want to actually just circle around on this a little bit, because this is us complaining about complaining, and that's second order complaining, and that's even worse. So to make this into like actually something that's productive, hey, how do you be a good community? How do you be an interesting and useful and fun and expressive and engaging community? One thing, so there's a couple of things. The first is, players tend to be very good at identifying where there is a problem, because they're the ones that are playing the game. And that's useful to developers. Even if ultimately there might be a solution to something that you find, there's nothing wrong with saying, wow, this thing was really, really strong and I'm not sure how to deal with it. Because having that as dialogue, that developers be like, oh, we can see that players are struggling with desolation beasts who've just been released, and okay, that's interesting, we're going to monitor that. What is really so like, there's nothing wrong at all with jumping onto a Discord and being like, guys, I got my ass beat by this thing. Any suggestions? But that's the really important thing, is in terms of being a good community, and this actually leads to long-term game health, is if you get your ass beat by something, if you lose to Old Dominion, if you lose to the new release, if Weavers, like, fuck, Weavers have got Moose Cavalry now, and I was not prepared for them, and I got flogged. Cool. Guys, has anyone played against these? What did you find was good? Weavers players, how do you, like, what do you think of the fragilities? If you get your ass beat by something, or you're winning a whole bunch with something, and you focus on, with the tools that we have, what are the solutions? That is so much better for the long-term game health for multiple reasons. The first reason is that it's just more fun and productive, and it gives you as players agency. It's a solution that is not passivity, right? It's not as much as seductive as it might be. It is not long-term productive to wait passively for the game to change as a solution. Find out what your agency is and figure out how to express it. But the other reason why that is a really big deal, and I have seen this happen in Conquest, is that if you have, there might be a solution to something where there's a regiment that exists. Ashen Dawn is a very good example. There's a regiment that exists, and it's like, wow, these are kind of new, and they've made a splash, and this seems strong as hell. If we were to turn our minds to this and try and figure out partial or complete solutions, we might actually do so. It might take 6 months, but like, you could reach a point where the meta readjusts, and Mudcourt is 100% going to be an example. There are, like, everyone is going to have to learn how to play against it's either Mud or Mist. Like, take your pick, but Court of Water, with a something else. Sorcerer Kings, that's fucking coming. That tidal wave is looming, and it has not yet splashed down on everyone. But if you haven't yet played against that, you're going to have to at some point soon. And then you're going to have that moment where you're going to be arse deep in water terrain with married regiments that are inflicting hits on you 3 different ways in a round, and you're going to have your first experience with an aqueous branding Court of Water in base contact. What do you mean your 1 wound remaining command stand did 10 hits to me? You're going to have that. You're going to have all of those experiences. You're going to have your backfield stuff auto-sniped. You're going to be down 200 points on turn 4 with no recourse because of infinite range offensive stuff. You're going to deal with all of that. And there's going to be, I am going to have a strong urge to have a bit of a complaint. But there are ways of learning how to deal with that. You got to play against it. You got to lose to it. You got to play it against it again. You got to lose to it again. You got to figure it out. And as much as I would personally love, for example, for developers to put a range limitation on the creation of the water puddle, let it move after that, but don't let it go down anywhere, just so that distance can be a counterplay. But that doesn't exist right now. I got to deal with that. Perhaps my lists have to adjust. Perhaps I need to put less stock in defense 1, evasion 0, minimum size units holding characters. Perhaps that's something that I should not put in my list as much because they die in 2 rounds automatically to a geyser. But the thing that happens is that let's say that I was to represent the totality of the community, and I went online and I complained, and the devs acted on my complaints. I'm still going to have, in 6 months' time, I'm still going to have 6 months of experience. I'm going to be figuring out the solutions. You have balance problems that arise in the opposite direction, where if players are passive and they just rely on the game changing to solve their problems, that the devs will fix it syndrome, then you still invariably will have 12 months of player development and figuring out the solution. And so by the time the devs come around to adjusting something, if the players are 2/3 of the way to figuring out the solutions themselves, what you have then is a nerf incoming on something that the meta has just begun to adapt to. And at that point, even a small nerf can render something like way less competitively viable. And so as a community, it's one of those things where it's like, just start the conversation with, I got my ass beat, how can I fix that? And genuinely, I think the Conquest community is like 70% there. It's actually not too bad. It's just that the signal to win ratio sometimes feels louder than it is because you're sensitive to that.
I find there's like in everything, anything, other war games, anything in the world with the community, there's a loud minority that just keeps going off, and you kind of see it. And some people
the ignore list, the Discord ignore function exists for a reason.
Yeah, it's my thing is though, it's like you and I know, so we do it. It's when new players come in and they see these people going off and don't understand yet like what's going on. It's like it influences them, then influences their growth and productivity in the game itself. What I'm just like, it's like, gotta keep the babies safe. You gotta protect these little babes. You will grow up to be big and strong.
Yeah, there's a cultural thing. That's like, one of my big rules about content creation, and I have not always followed it, but I mostly have, is you don't shit where you eat. We play in the communities that we talk to. These people, like these communities, the immediate communities are our friends, but the health of the games are healthy when the communities are healthy. And Song of Ice and Fire actually is the opposite example, where a lot of how I do content creation comes from a what not to do lesson I learned from Song of Ice and Fire, which is that Song of Ice and Fire had the biggest. There was Song of Ice and Fire Stats was a website. I have some opinions about the overall utility of robust statistical generation as well, by the by. I think my lesson from Song of Ice and Fire is that Song of Ice and Fire Stats is a webpage that existed that tracked win rates down to the regimental level. How well? So imagine in Conquest, what is the win rate percentage of men at arms? And that created a self-reinforcing loop where the people who submitted stats to that page were the people who cared about that kind of thing, and therefore were influenced by that kind of thing. it did not actually create like being able to see that Knights of Casterly Rock had a 41% win rate and a EV ranking of this did not produce good list building. It did not produce a dynamic meta. It just calcified Song of Ice and Fire's meta rapidly and immediately because people looked at that and went, cool, I'll take the good stuff, which meant the good stuff was overrepresented. And because these sweaty, it just created a bad situation. Seeing that and seeing the effect that had on the community, and just because man, Song of Ice and Fire toward the end was a community of whinge merchants, and that creates a self-reinforcing cycle. That creates a situation where a new player jumps in and sees that and figures that that's how you engage, I guess. And it was rough. Conquest is not that, but Conquest is not that, at least in some part, because you've got people like you putting out content that is just like mostly kind of a fun listen. Mostly like enthusiasm comes through, and like the communicating the extent to which decisions can change, your decisions change the outcome of a game, comes through, and that's super important. And it's also important if you're talking about the game generally. If you're on the Discord and you're having a chat, emphasize things that you can do, things that are cool, things that are fun, things that you can do to change the game. Yep, sure, Dwegom are steel forged like 5% overtuned. Probably fucking yep, powerful things are allowed to exist. Is Court of Water definitely gonna cause some emotions in people when they really start playing against it properly? Yep, 100%. But that's pretty cool. Hey, it's significant and it's unique, and we got to learn how to deal with it. And approaching things from that perspective creates a better community, and community creates a better game, and that makes the game last longer. That's what gives like Conquest's community. I was impressed with it when I first jumped in, and I have stayed mostly pretty impressed with it, despite like the conversation of the last half an hour. Is broadly pretty good, and if people keep trying to make it good, it'll stay good, and you get a really good game out of that as a result.
No, I agree with you. Like, to be honest, there's a point where I just like kind of stepped away from the broader. Like, I still made videos, still talked about stuff, but I just kind of stepped away from the broader Conquest community, simply because it's just like you can only take so much of just like reading stuff, and you're like, I need to step back from this. But
you got to know your limits. Yep.
Yeah, and I didn't know where my limits were on that, so that was a learning experience for myself personally. Especially because like I'm a creator, but one of the things is people are like, you're held to a higher standard. I'm like, man, I'm just a guy who's giving you free stuff because I want to have some fun. But lately it's been a lot of just, hey, I wanna. Where is one? Blah 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 blah. Oh, here I'm playing this list. What can I do better? And I'm like, here's a write up. Like, let's start from the top. You could MSU this. You could get those points and put it into another MSU. You don't need this seizing upgrade on this one regiment because if they are sitting on a zone, you're winning. This upgrade does nothing. Like, I'm just reading. I'm shorthanding what I wrote to a guy.
Yep, I'm familiar with that exact kind of engagement.
Yeah, and it's just like,
here's some ways that you can save points. I can make your list about 10% better. Here's how you play it.
Yeah, and then like here's some general advice. Like there's stuff like that. What's like, okay, this helps out everybody. Weirdly enough, I know, like, I to be honest, I don't know how I got here, but somehow I play at the top level or around there. And I do understand that the game is not 100% competitive. Like, a lot of players, in especially war games and a lot of stuff, engage it at a casual level, but they enjoy watching and talking at the higher levels. Like, a lot, like, NHL, or football, or hockey, or whatever. Like, a lot of people, or I'll use Canada, like at the NHL, a lot of people enjoy watching hockey at a very high level. That's why the NHL exists. That's why there's teams, that's why there's players, and people follow them around. They have their favorites and they go. Players in Wargame do the same thing. Your favorite hockey team is your favorite faction. Your favorite player is your favorite regiment, stuff like that. And everything goes through cycles, just like they do in real-life sports. But also players tend to enjoy these things on a more casual level, where they'll join a league, where they'll join a local hockey league where you kind of just show up on every Wednesday and you go play a game of hockey after work. There's plenty of that. I live close by a community center, and I'll drive by it at about 7 p.m. on a Wednesday, and there's a bunch of 30 to 50-year-old men skating around playing hockey in the winter. on clockwork.
I've got a mate that refs for exactly that kind of a league.
Yeah, and like a lot of players engage with the game on that kind of level. They show up, they enjoy it, they show up once a week, or maybe they take a little while longer, and like that's one of my things of like my thing about like the people who get too much into casual versus competitive. I believe these things need to work in tandem with each other because it's going to make the greater whole of the game better. You want like
the line that I've used in the past when we're talking about like the role of developers and the difficulty of the work that developers have to do is that because people often present it as a binary where you'll hear, and Lord knows that I have been this person in the past, you'll hear competitive players say the game should be balanced around competition play. And I understand the perspective that they're coming from, even if it is a bit self-centered. It's not exactly wrong. How I would expand it is no. Not least because 95% of the players of this game are not competition players. But power level, particularly maximum power level, that should probably be balanced around the experience of competitive players. But the experience of the game, how the game feels, that kind of needs to be balanced or developed around the experience of casual players. They are as equally or more important. But it's not. We look at the like raw stats of models and we go, well, that's this powerful in competition play, and yeah, it is, and maybe it needs to be adjusted up or down as a result. But the role of the game developer is not just to adjust power; it's to build the experience that the game presents, and that experience needs to be built in a way that 95% of the player base gets maximal enjoyment out of it. Yep. And that's the really difficult piece of work that, as competition players, we often overlook, but which is probably the bigger part of the dev's job and is like very, very important.
So in War Machine, you were around this time because you were around with the CID. There was Will Pagani, who was a competitive War Machine player who became a Privateer Press developer, and he now works for
Steamforged, I think.
Yeah, it's Marvel Crisis Protocol. Yeah, it was Marvel Crisis Protocol. He's one of the lead devs over there. So congratulations to him. Really fantastic guy. Love him to death. But I use this quote every once in a while, and it's actually a very good quote. Is not everything needs to be powerful, but everything needs to be interesting. So
yes,
you need to look at each of the regiments when you're building your list, casually, competitively, whatever for, and go, this is interesting. Will that ability help me for what I'm trying to do, or trying to either present to my opponent, overcome from what my opponent is doing, or is that something I want to play with today? And when he did that, and his design was very interesting, and I felt when he was doing that stuff for War Machine, there's a lot of options in War Machine at that point for what you could grab and play, because it was like, this is interesting. I see where it can be helpful and useful. Can I use it? Am I either A, skilled enough to get the most out of it, or B, is it going to be useful for what I am currently playing, in the game right now?
Yep.
And I really like that line because it really just shows, because it helps both ways. The people at the high end, the people playing whatever, and that's I like to see that out of the war game, because it adds more to each of the units and characters and all so on.
It's a good philosophy, yeah.
Yeah, because
sometimes probably easier said than done, but as a guiding star, I don't mind that at all. Not everything has to be powerful, but everything does have to be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because we have both played War Machine where you ever play with Sword Knights? You played Signar? Okay.
Yep.
Did you ever at a point realize it was kind of like a dead unit?
I remember trying to use them as a Jack Marshal and achieving moderate success. They were not powerful, but they were interesting.
Yeah. I played them in Mercenaries in Mark II under Bad Seeds Magnus because you could ambush them from the flank. They weren't powerful, but they sure as hell were interesting at that point.
Yep.
And I played.
Conquest has lost. Do you? So
go ahead.
You know Saturoi,
the sword guys in the hoods.
The ones that Saturoi used to be able to come in off of any part of the reinforcement line, reinforcement side, ignoring reinforcement lines. That feels like a unit that, and I respect, like, sometimes the devs do just have to go, we can't make this concept work, so it has to change. But I feel like Saturoi with that a little bit, where Saturoi, probably correctly, Saturoi were never truly powerful. They were always a bit too expensive, a bit too fragile. They could be responded to. There were a lot of handbrakes that stopped Saturoi from becoming powerful, but the mechanic was interesting.
Yep.
And I think the community probably was never quite willing to lean into embracing them for that, embracing them for jank. I think there have been some other regiments as well where it's like, nope, we just accept that we can't make this work in the way that it is, and it has to change.
Like throughout the history of the game, yeah, I agree with you, because like, I think right now off the top of my head is Uflenar from Nords, what is a 170 Class 2 7 attack, medium infantry with like Vanguard 4. But like the thing about them is that they have the Savage, so they go up to 200 points and they threat 13 inches auto on a charge. But at 200 points and at Clash 2, even with their volume attacks, they're not really doing enough damage. And then they're also like 4 wounds at defense 2. So they do have Tenacious 1, but like they're dying very quickly on the clap back. So like, I see what you're trying to do. I think you're just too expensive and don't really do it that well.
There, as an example, they sort of work, but because what they're doing is they are engaging with the game in a way that is just very sort of like, it's straightforward. It is very core. It's very core to how the game plays, and so that's the kind of regiment where interesting often falls victim. Interesting is a casualty to power. Ulfadnar, I've seen double Berserk lists using the Savage absolutely work. In fact, I'm pretty sure they won CanCon last year. But Ulfadnar are far enough down the power curve as a lighter, less dangerous medium that they're a situation where, like, for all of the, it doesn't have to be powerful, it doesn't have to be interesting, Ulfadnar engage so directly with the game that powerful they do need to be, to a certain point, powerful as well. The reason why I picked Saturoi is that they do something that was, though they did something that was so fundamentally unique that. Another example actually is the 2 different things that exist in the game, or 3 different things that exist in the game right now that prevent duels from being declined, like Way of the Kensai.
Yeah,
Way of the Kensai is overcosted, and it is absolutely correct that it be overcosted, because if Way of the Kensai was aggressively costed, it would break certain fundamental aspects of the game, because a daimyo slaps, and so you have to have, like, Way of the Kensai is exactly correct to cost 40 points. It's an upgrade, it doesn't have a model associated with it, you can take it or leave it, and so what it exists as is something that Euroni players from time to time can go, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna waste 40 points of my list just because once per game I'm going to be able to give my opponent a panic attack. Even if that does not win me the game, I'm going to cause, and I've sat across the table with my eccentric fighting style Calidburn Lord, and my opponent has gone, oh no, this character has Quicksilver Strikes and has Way of the Kensai, and I have had to back up a 300-point regiment to stop myself getting March Charge dueled by a Kitsune or some shit that had. I'm not sure if it was an Oyabun. I think Way of the Kensai gives Quicksilver Strikes as well. I forget.
It does. Just looked at it.
And
40 points.
yeah, and it turns out that when you reroll successful defense rolls and she has 8 attacks with deadly, you're fucking dead. And so Way of the Kensai, like, that was my opponent experimenting with it. It does not appear in the Euroni lists anymore because it's too expensive to be really competitively viable, but it's interesting. And those kind of masteries are perfect. I actually think Way of the Kensai is perfectly costed and is a perfect mastery, and more factions should have those, like, random little things where it's like, this is too expensive to be really good. However,
yeah,
it's fucking interesting.
So Dwagum as the Tempered Gourd is the same thing for 35, but you lose Quicksilver.
Yep.
The other one was interesting. Go ahead.
I've seen one list with the Tempered Gourd in it, and it is a very, very good player running that list, and I'm like, I will watch that list's career with great interest.
The The other one that's actually really interesting is Runeforge Plate. They can spend up to 2 markers from their pool. If they spend one power marker, they add +1 to their attacks. And if they spend 2, they get +3. I forget if the wizard can wear. No, they should be able to.
You put that on a Steel Shaper.
Yeah, and you just smite the. And then can you run champion horns? No, you can't because it's a weapon. Yeah, so you can just get more smites. Like I think it's 25 points, and you're spending your resource. No, it's 20 points, and you're spending your resource. But it is fun to give that guy more smite attacks. Like each time it hits, it does work.
That's a wonderful little bit of design as well. I have some broad opinions on the tempered token economy. I think it's very slightly too aggressive, but like ignore that. That's not important. The Runeforged Plate is a wonderful little bit of design because it's a piece of equipment that is good sometimes, because you don't need it in Sorcerer Warlord lists, because Sorcerer Warlord lists have an ample outlet for the huge amount of tokens that they generate. But as soon as you get into a Steel Shaper Warlord list, Steel Shaper Warlord generates even more tokens and doesn't need them as much, because a Steel Shaper spells are pass-fail, and they usually pass. So a Steel Shaper Warlord is sitting there with this, like, I can't hold all of these tokens, and coincidentally the Runeforged Plate is awesome on a Steel Shaper. So you have this little bit of design where it's like, this artifact is only good. It's great in a small number of lists, it's good in a small number of other lists. That makes it interesting, where you're like, you reach for that under specific circumstances. I actually really, really like that as a bit of design.
Or you have 20 points left over and you're taking a Steel Shaper, or even a Lost Ancestor. Turn that on a Lost Ancestor. Yep. He's cleaved 2, give him a couple more attacks. You got the tokens. Thaumaturge, we're doing Dwaycom because that's what I've been playing lately.
Everyone was so frothy about Thaumaturge.
I know, and it's just like I myself included, before really digging into Dwaycom and playing the games, I was like, this is gonna do some solid work, and it's just not doing it.
Competitively, I can tell you, Thaumaturge is a bad upgrade. Don't take it. I have been keeping track of games that I have seen Thaumaturge field in, and I think the average number of times Thaumaturge triggers in a game where it is taken is about 1/3 of a time per game. However, doesn't matter. It's an optional upgrade, and it's cool, and you can build around it, and it's an upgrade that can create an experience.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's not like it is good, but it is very interesting if you can get it to work. And there are times like where you can get it work, where you kind of just like blast the guy to death as
if you really put effort into it, you can have games where that power fantasy materializes.
Yeah, you can get up to 12 dice and just shoot someone in the face with a fireball.
Yeah, and interference is everywhere these days, specifically because Dwagom are very good and Sorcerer Kings are very good.
Yeah.
So those 12 dice will inflict 4 hits. However,
you did
still fucking cool.
Yeah. Your opponent there for a moment will go, oh shit, as you roll 12 dice and only land 4 of them. Yeah, I do like how they express stuff in the upgrades. I think the upgrades are the place. One of the great places to increase interest.
Yeah, because you're not spending hard-earned dollars on regimental upgrades or like character upgrades. That's where they can flex. Because a unit costs $55 to $100. Will-o-wisps, for example,
yeah.
they can't. Will-o-wisps can't be a unit that is anything other than consistent and valuable and useful because they cost money. But you can absolutely be like, Way of the Kensai, Runeforged Plate, throw that shit into factions. That's such a good place for the devs to put, and I think they generally do with a fair bit of success. Put stuff that is not necessarily powerful but interesting in those kind of rules.
Yeah,
I'm excited for Spires. Actually, I hope they do stuff like that with Spires.
Well,
Spires is a great faction for that.
You probably just woke up, but one of the guys in the
I have seen the Shadow rules drop for Consumption Beasts, Merchant Prince, and Desolation Beast.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm missing something on the Merchant Prince because it appears to have. I don't. I don't think they stuck the landing with the Merchant Prince. It's got one specifically very powerful thing about it that should not be in the game, and then fate dice.
Yes, the return of fate dice. Good old system.
No game has ever had bad outcomes as a result of fate dice. Surely that's never been a thing that has completely.
Oh, it's always active too, so you can't even kill him to shut it down. That's cool.
No, yep.
He just gets.
But like, is that supremacy? He doesn't otherwise appear to have any meaningful abilities because Master Manipulator is a lot of text that's actually not necessarily high impact.
No, you either get
that man is 100. That man's 120 points for 3 attacks clash 2. So that's like that character for what he does is the supremacy ability is probably too powerful. Just maybe it's fine, but like that ability is historically problematic in war games. And in every other respect, I think that guy appears to be 60 points overcosted in terms of what you're getting on rate for the body. Probably more. He doesn't do anything.
Yeah, he's like worse than the Imperial Officer. Because like the Imperial Officer is doing something, well, arguably better than 3 attacks clash 2, but he was 4 attacks, but
4 attacks clash 2, yeah. I don't know exactly.
He's just a buffing boy, and I think they're pricing him for the fact of the fate dice. And if your opponent wants to play the regiment off game for some freaking reason.
Maybe, yeah. That's... Well, like, supremacy abilities have to be powerful. Like, the fact that he's got any Spire's regiment as restricted is interesting.
Is that balanced? I had no idea.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, like, that's a... I am looking forward to seeing what the Merchant Prince looks like in an update cycle or 2, because there's just... As he currently is, there's no way. I can't tell you whether he's too powerful or useless, which is interesting. That is interesting. But Lord knows, God knows what he's gonna.
Yeah.
Fate dice plus a worthless character stand. We'll see. That'll be fascinating. The other ones look pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm like already looking at the was Deso Beast? Yeah, the Deso Beast from like, man, dude's got a good volley stat, good gun. I love this, and then it's like, the bombardment ability on the gun. Yeah, I really love taking extra damage from stuff by my thing that's getting shot. This will be awesome.
The Deso Beast, it's 230 points and a heavy that can't fight in melee. So that'll be one that's like. No, it's like I tell a lie. It's trample 6. It might be able to.
Is it? No, what do you mean trample 6?
Yeah, the Deso Beast. The Deso Beast is a bit weird.
I'm looking at the Consumption Beast then, because he has the.
Yeah, the Deso Beast is the first.
Oh, he does the trample.
First like heavy ranged regiment. That's going to be interesting to see because, like, on one hand, heavy and ranged actually might be fine, because you can contribute immediately upon turning up.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, volleys have a sort of role in the game. That'll be interesting. I think the Deso Beast, I'm keen to play with it and see how it goes.
Well, also the Deso Beast doesn't let you use your evasion stat against its AP2. And it's a volley 3 aiming to 4 on range 16. Like, that's going to be...
you have to activate that ability somehow. There's something called strain expression, which they've mentioned. Mm-hmm. So that's probably not always on. That's interesting because that can evasion is one of those stats. Yeah, well, it that will have a weird meta impact, I think. So we'll see. The Consumption Beast, I like. The Consumption Beast is a really interesting thing that they haven't done before. Where I think it's kind of clever design, where it starts the game wounded and can be healed, and then it has an effect when it's healed. That's the closest that we have to that is the Fallen Divinity, who is interesting and unique game design. So I don't know how good the Consumption Beast is. It's probably good, but it's interesting. That particularly that gorged rule, where once you get it up to full health, its attack comes fully online, is like, this is a medium, but it's a medium that requires you to kind of like play a mini game.
Yeah, and
Okay.
And then we get to see what other things are going on in the faction to see how quick that minigame is going to happen, because
it's the best kind. It's the best kind of minigame as well, because so every now and again you will see factions in war games where there's a minigame but just one player is playing it, and I have a relatively limited
what are you talking about
for that.
Sorcerer Kings, Dweg Home.
Yep.
There's probably someone else in there. Oh, would Weavers with the paintball guns?
Yep.
And
yeah.
No, we already got that in Conquest.
The thing about the mini game that the Consumption Beast offers is that, to an extent, both players can interact with it, because you get your payoff when the Consumption Beast reaches full health. And so if you're playing against Spires, what will probably happen is that Consumption Beast will just play conservatively for several turns till it's fully healed. But even that's like, okay, cool, well, it's the advantage it has of being a medium is beginning to diminish at that point. Okay, cool. So if you can pressure the Consumption Beast, or you have like a unit of longbows that, like, the Spires player will have a bunch of healing, absolutely. If they're playing Consumption Beast, they will. But if you have like a unit of longbows that puts 2 wounds on the Consumption Beast, and that puts it outside of range of triggering Gorged for a round, then that's real. If you're playing a Sorcerer Kings player and you keep flinging it with spiteful winds or some shit,
you're mudding the shit out of it.
It's a mini game that both players can interact with, and that's cool. So I have a very hard time figuring out whether or not the Consumption Beast is powerful, but
it's interesting.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
So that'll be cool to play with.
Oh, I agree. I think a lot of people are going to be really excited for new Spires. Just like, even with this little 3 regiment preview, if it comes out close like this, like it is, I do agree, it's all interesting, and like I'm curious, and piqued my interest, where I'm like, okay, I want to play a game with it, I want to see it, I want to know more, kind of thing. Like,
yep, I am a Spires player. I've enjoyed. There are things about Spires that I really hope are retained in the rework, which we don't have any information that's publicly available on yet, so who knows. But stuff like the core experience for me of Spires is actually the stack manipulation, because what it lets you do is feel like you're scheming and then having that scheme blow up in your face. And that's the most quintessential Spires experience imaginable. Where you're like, ha 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 ha, everything will go according to plan, and then your opponent kills one unit at the wrong place in the wrong time, and now all of this stack manipulation you had prepared with Ferromancies and Biomancies no longer works. And then they remove and then you can't activate all of your stuff, and then everything goes terribly wrong, and so you have that like Spires experience of, I'm a genius. Oh no!
the mech suit. I think that's from a Gundam show.
Yep. That's how Spires ideally for me should play, and I don't know what they'll do with it, because stack manipulation is so closely rooted to the current rules for Biomancies and Ferromancies. Yeah. So, like, question mark. But the indiscriminate omnivore, gorged, healing Consumption Beast is an example of a regiment that you have a plan, and whether or not, and if the plan succeeds, like, I can imagine a turn where you're like, this is the turn the Consumption Beast is going to charge, and I only need to heal it a little bit more, so I'm going to heal it and then activate the Consumption Beast and charge, and I'll have 16 attacks. And then your opponent dives it and throws off a fireball, and it takes 3 wounds, and you're like, oh no. And so if they can hit that with Spires, and that gives you, if they do that, you've got experienced players have that skill expression, where experienced players can make the plans work with like 90% consistency and still have the occasional oh no moment. And everyone else can have the worst case scenario for Spire's rework, which does not appear to have materialized from these rules, which is really good, is if the devs don't get the brief and rework Spires as create Skaven. That would be the thing to avoid, because like Skaven are mad scientists, right? But like, so I think there was one reference here where I saw reference to biomancers can roll 2d6 and pick the highest when you heal. Okay, that's a very variable amount of healing. Grotesque Elixir allows you to heal 1d6 wounds on a monster within 12. That's really variable. I'm a bit like, okay, let's just see how much of that comes through.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as the faction is reworked in a way where you get to make plans, and then how good of a schemer you are determines how much your opponent is able to throw a wrench in those plans, determines like the play rhythm. That'll be really cool. So cautiously optimistic at the moment about the Spires rework. I think it's probably the most challenging rework because a lot of Spire's identity is rooted in secondary effects of their current mechanics that may be difficult to preserve. But from these, I am optimistic, and if nothing else, having a rule named Paleotic Fetor is that's expressive. I'm here for that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I also think Spires was always going to be a hard one to balance because it really not to cause problems with the developers, but it really seemed like they didn't know where to go with Spires after their initial design, and also either adding on because stuff feel really all over the place and just kind of like not actually helping it, especially with the stack manipulation. Like that was their thing. And like playing, like one of my primary opponents plays all Spires, and there's always like the 10 minutes at the start of every turn where you gotta wait for them to sort their stack.
To do their stack, yes.
Because they gotta manipulate it, and they gotta like have everything set up so they can actually do their proper thing, like their whole mad genius thing.
I come back to Spires every few months, and I have that like I know you're finished, but I just need a couple of minutes to see the future here. Yeah, I 100% get that. Yep.
And to be honest, I would like them to maintain the stack manipulation, as it is very interesting and it's cool and it's like Spires. But the time spent screwing around, even for your opponent, because like I like Conquest because there is that back and forth. It's very like you can just start hammering cards back and forth, get through a turn pretty quick. If it's just kind of like you're in that fight phase of the game at around like 4, 5, 6.
The mental downtime in Conquest is low, and that's one of its strengths.
Mm-hmm. But I find that there have been plenty of like turns where it's like, okay, it's turn 5. We got 3 to 4 fights to do this turn. What fights do you value? And the Spires player is like, hold on there, good sir. I'm just sorting my stack so I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, when it's my turn the first time. And I'm like, holy fuck, I've already looked at the same box on the shelf 3 times already. Like, please, let's go.
The other,
I can only not buy Star Wars Shatterpoint so many times.
I'm very familiar with the experience you're describing from the other side, where like I'm sitting there, I'm deeply conscious of the fact that you have finished drafting your stack like 2 minutes ago, and I'm just like, hang on. So this will go then, and this will go then. Just give me a second. This will go. If we played on clock, that would be fine. The comment I would make about the Spires rework otherwise is, and this is with regards to the thing you said about like Spires after their initial release. I don't think the rules architecture existed in version 1 of Conquest to like Conquest waiting for things like the developers being able to put like Battlefield roles is not exactly like not a perfect example, but Battlefield roles and their introduction in 100 Kingdoms is an example of putting the supporting architecture into the rules in place that then allow for other things to happen. And because the first gen of Conquest was very much in the model of, like I said, it was an Alessa Caviatore River Horse rule set as the baseline before Parabellum then took it with like, thank you for your work, now we're going to work on this ourselves. And so it was a very like fundamental. It was like all of these core mechanics that kind of like, this is how the game is played. You play the game according to these core mechanics. And it's taken a couple of additions and then further work inside those additions to generate the kind of supporting structures in the rules that allow things like the Desolation Beast and the Consumption Beast, I think, to exist. And it's probably mostly in place now. So it's going to be interesting to see. Spires is the faction. Like, 100 Kingdoms needed battlefield roles to make the alliance system work, and did a really good job with it. They put battlefield roles in a lot of other factions to greater or lesser extent. That's fine. Just bear in mind that it's an architecture function. It's not necessarily always going to have the same impact. But Spires is probably the faction where the creative things that can be done with those systems, I hope, will express themselves. Which feels like it's putting a lot on the developers. As long as it's fun.
I hope so. These guys gotta start developing. Wrap it out. No, I'm fucking with them.
Well, like they've got the developer team has expanded in 2025.
They got the J's.
They hopefully the resources are in place that they can do good work. We'll see. We'll have to just see how it goes. And that, I would probably note, is not a bad point to end the episode, because I'm getting fucking hungry.
Oh, are you hinting at something? You don't want to go another 3 hours? Yeah, this happens normally. All right. So with my wonderful guest finally succumbing to fatigue, as is tradition in BonkTable, I'm hard and fast and rough, and I appreciate all the time you have spent with me. Let's close her out. So, Robert, thank you for joining me. I hope I didn't creep you out too much, or just
No, just the right amount.
Just the right amount. Okay, good. I'll do weirder stuff to Saxon later. Jesus Christ. Okay. Let's be an adult for 2 seconds, and then we can get this done. Robert, is there anything you would like to plug at the end of the episode here?
Look, I'm sure Mass will link this, but otherwise, if you're not familiar, if you're interested in anything, particularly with regards to Infinity, the game, but I cover Conquest as well, you can find my YouTube channel. It's at Robert Shepard. If you Google Robert Shepard Conquest or Robert Shepard Infinity, you'll probably find the damn thing. Lord knows that my co-workers finally did. That's about the only thing that I would plug. Otherwise, if you're in Australia and you haven't yet bought tickets, CanCon is the seminal event of the year. It's coming up end of January. Now's a really good time to get your tickets. Hint, hint. I think it's going to be a 6-rounder, which is going to be the biggest Conquest event. If I'm playing at that one, it's going to be the biggest Conquest event that I've played. So go and buy your tickets for that, damn it. Otherwise, CGS will give the space to Age of Sigmar again.
No, can't have that happen. Also, people need to play Robert Shepard. I heard he's pretty good at this game. And you might even end up in a battle report.
We should have a TTS game at some point.
Oh boy, yeah. I guess we will. This is how I'm gonna get my TTS games in: interviewing the person, then playing them on TTS. I don't know if you've seen my TTS games. They're mostly me just anguishing about TTS, but I'll be down.
Accept limitations of the system. Otherwise, Mass, look, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
All right, thank you very much, Robert. As for BonkTable, like and subscribe. You can watch these or listen to them anywhere you get your podcasts: YouTube, Spotify, Podbeam, Apple Podcast, wherever you get them. What else? If you'd like to just talk to us more in person, you can always join the BonkTable Discord. Robert and I are both there. We'd be glad to talk to you about really anything, except the weird stuff. That's it. And lastly, my own convention, BonkCon, is happening in June 6th and 7th, Winnipeg, Manitoba, 2026. So currently, we're at 26 players. Last time I checked. Max is 32, but if we get to 32 and there's still plenty of time, I can open up for more because we have plenty of space for the venue I've chosen. Come on down, enjoy Canada, all that fun stuff. With that, Robert, thank you for being here. I've had a lovely time with you. I greatly appreciate the discussion we just had. And this was a blast. I hope to see you again and also have you on more.
Thanks very much, Mass.
Okay, with that, bye!